motion to, well, one, we have a roll call. Bill, can you do a roll call real fast?
Yes. This is a dumb question. How's a roll call work? Let's get
You call a name and we say here.
Okay, I can do that. Great. Go ahead.
Do the same thing for any vote. If you need to vote on anything, you need to go through the roll call and like say each person's name and they vote aye or whatever after their name is called.
All right. Well, here we go.
You're too young. I used to do this all the time in grade school.
All right. Well, here we go. In no particular order. Mr. Reed.
Here.
Mr. Frazier. Here. Mr. Aura. Council Ace Aurora?
Here.
I think she just said here.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Druffel?
Here.
And Mr. Crumbo?
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we have a quorum. Is there a motion to hold this by teleconference according to the appropriate statutes? Is there a second?
So there's actually some specific wording for that motion that would be ideal, if you don't mind. I need someone to move that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak.
This is Kevin. I want to make that. Okay. Second. Second. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay.
You do need to vote by roll call.
I was going to say that. Okay. Bill.
All right, here I go. Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Council Ace Aurora?
Yes.
Councilman Druffel?
Yes.
Mr. Crumbo?
Yes. Okay. Motion carried. Before we get into Wanda real quickly, I know Kevin had mentioned kind of centralizing, asking these questions. And if I have anybody that wants to volunteer to do that, speak up. But if not, what I plan on doing is just continue the same practice, kind of gets us all engaged and we can all listen to the answers. And I would just ask Juan to just say next question and need to know when, that we don't step on each other. That being said, we have Mr. Schulman is not here, but the copy I have didn't have him here at the last meeting, and I think we had Mr. Crumbo taking number 6. So does everybody have the same interview sheet?
The last one, Mr. Reed, the last one I sent, I had put after the number everyone, and I think I had for number 2, I had Mr. Schulman or Mr. Frazier.
Frazier, that's
and
correct.
And then for number 6, Mr. Schulman or Mr. Crumbo.
Crumbo, that's correct.
Yeah, okay, very good. Yep.
Okay. Okay, so I turn it over to you.
Excuse me.
Hey, so this is Kevin. I'm sorry. Are you going to ask all the questions, or are you going to do a round robin again?
Yeah, unless somebody wants to volunteer to ask all the questions, continue the practice of letting everybody ask, kind of keeps us all engaged. Wanda can just say next question, and we can go to the next one. We probably do need to have assign a question. I don't think everybody has a question right now, but yeah, that's what I prefer.
Yes, and I didn't have the question. I was not at the last interview, so I don't even have the list of questions. Can that be sent to me? And if you're assigning, would you be able to assign one to me as well?
Okay. You want to take number 2?
Yeah, I need to get a copy of the questions again. I'm looking through my audit file. I thought I had them, but I don't have them. Yeah, thanks. This is Kevin. Same here.
Bill, do you have them or do you want me to send?
Do you mind? It'll take me a minute to find them. Do you mind sending them to them?
Hey, Brack, why don't you just go ahead and ask them all?
Because I have a lot of background noise here, and I'll be muted a lot.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right,
It's not a very good day at the household over here.
So Mr. Crumbo and Councilman Suara, you're the two that need them, correct?
This is Druffel. I need them also.
Okay,
And this is a list of 7 questions, right?
that's correct.
Plus, I'd just love to have everybody get engaged. You know, someone's going to have to win the award from Vice Mayor Schulman.
Oh, that'd be hard to beat. Okay, I found my questions.
Who was that?
This is Tom. I found my questions. I got question number 3, it looks like, if I have this right.
Okay. Mr. Crumbo, Councilman Suara, I just sent those to you.
You probably send them to Tom too, because I think the latest one, the numbers have changed a little bit. He probably found his original one.
Yeah, I got my original one.
Oh, okay, all right.
Brack, are you going to go down and just tell us for sure which questions we have?
Yeah, we'll do that. As soon as everybody gets the sheet of music, we'll
Okay.
go through and make sure.
Sounds good.
And hey, Kevin, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate. I know you're going through a lot of hard work right now, and I watch them every Monday. You guys are on all our prayer list. I hope you know that.
Yes.
Well, thank you for that. It's certainly been a challenge, particularly having everyone distributed at their homes and whatnot as we try and make our way through this really challenging budget process. So it's been a challenge, and I appreciate you saying that.
Well, I know you didn't sign up for this part of it, but it's
It's a good thing my backyard part of this is corporate restructuring. So, if we're going to have something unexpected, I'm at least glad to know it's in an area that I know a little something about.
You're the perfect man, Kevin.
Well, we'll see. I appreciate you saying that. And I have the list of questions. This is the same list that we had last time.
yeah. Everybody got questions, and we'll confirm who's got what. Everybody ready to go over that?
Yeah, okay. I thought you had a new list or something. I got you.
No. I've got number. I laid it off. Well, Wanda will introduce. And Wanda, do you want us to introduce ourselves, or will you do that, or?
Well, I thought what I could do, because as you see with a conference call, it's kind of hard, people trying to talk at the same time. If you all are okay with it, once the candidate comes online, I was going to welcome them and just give the names of all of the members of the audit committee. And then when it's time for you to ask a question, you could formally introduce yourself at that point. How does that sound?
That sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, so I lead off. Number 2 is Council Lady. Is that not Mr. Schulman or Mr. Frazier, but?
No. All right, that works.
Okay, that works. Number 3 is Mr. Crumbo.
Yep, I'm in.
Number 4 is Mr. Frazier. Number 5 is Mr. Druffel. And then, Kevin, you'll get numbers, the vice mayor's number 6. And then I'll close. How's that?
Okay, that's great.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you taking your time.
And then what I'm doing right now is I have each of the, and a couple of the candidates had to rearrange their time at the last minute. So the schedule you have is a little bit different. I don't know if you have that in front of you. We have a little bit of a different order. Michael Hill is going to be our 12:10 interview. And then following him is John Valtierra, so those two flip-flopped. And then after that is Deborah Jenkins and then John Cashman. So they all came back after they originally scheduled and had to reschedule, but it actually all worked out. So anyway, I wanted to let you know that.
Okay.
And then what I'm doing, just so you know, members, is that when we're ready for the next candidate, I have them standing by text. I will send them the dial-in information. I don't want them to have that ahead of time in case they dial in while we're finishing up with another candidate, they would be able to listen in. So I'm sending them the dial-in information immediately before we need them to call in.
Okay.
Okay?
And then we'll ask our questions, and then one, if you'll just kind of facilitate, is there anything else, any
Yes.
follow-up, anything that the candidate wants to say, and then you can officially close it, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
One.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
This is Carrie. Can I make a quick clarification also? I just wanted to clarify for the record, this call is being recorded. Is that right, Bill? And
It is.
we will hold it, but we will broadcast it within 48 hours as is required by Executive Order 16. Is that correct, Bill?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. And the reason we're not broadcasting it live is just the custom that we've been following in terms of not wanting to disclose the interview questions just in case we have anyone who can't make it today and needs to be re-interviewed, I guess, over the next 48 hours.
Okay.
That was it.
All right, are we ready for me to send information to our first candidate?
Yes.
Okay. Do I remember correctly that Mr. Frazier is vice chair of the committee?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure so I got all the introductions. All right, so he has just confirmed he has the dial-in, so he should be joining us momentarily. This is Michael Hill who will be joining us. Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Good afternoon. This is Wanda Hadley. Welcome to our call this afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I wanted to let you know the names of the audit committee members who are going to be asking you interview questions in a round-robin style. They will ask you a question, and feel free to give, your entire answer, and then themselves or any of the other committee members can ask a follow-up question. They will ask the questions in a round-robin format, and then when all the questions have been answered and any follow-up questions answered, what time we have left, you'll have an opportunity to ask a question and or make any final comments before you sign off.
Okay.
Very good. Okay, do you have any questions at this moment?
I do not.
Okay. Well, I want to let you know that the audit committee members who are going to be asking you questions are the following. Mr. Brack Reed, who is chairman of the audit committee, Mr. Charles Frazier, who is vice chair of the audit committee. We have Mr. Kevin Crumbo, who is finance director for Metro Nashville government. We have Councilman Tom Druffel, who is on the committee, and then we also have Councilman Zwara Sulfat. And so with that, we will start. Mr. Reed, if you will ask the first question and get us started.
Wanda, Wanda, I am not hearing anything from Mr. Reed.
I am not either. Mr. Reed, are you
Oh,
there?
I'm sorry. I'm
Okay.
here.
Okay. If you'll get us
I will
started
be-
with the first question.
I was being polite and had a really great, anyway, this is Barack Reed, Michael, represent the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us. First question, how has your education and professional experience prepared you for the role of Metro Auditor?
Okay, well, I believe that my work experience has prepared me probably a lot more than my education. Not that my education did not, but it has been several years ago since I went through school at the University of Alabama. So I'm going to say the last 30 years of doing internal audit work for higher education, as well as the state of Tennessee, and then most recently nonprofit healthcare has provided me with the leadership skill set that will allow me to lead the Department of Internal Audit for Metropolitan Nashville. And to follow up on that I have been a chief audit officer for approximately 22, 23 years in different segments, with staffs ranging from 1 or 2 to as many as 9 professional staff members. So I think all of this, in general, and comprehensive, has prepared me and will allow me to lead the audit department in a successful way.
Okay, thank you.
Any follow-up questions? All right, next question, Councilman Suara.
Hi, Michael. I'm Zolfat Sora. I'm a council member at large with the council. I'm a CPA by trade, and I had a stint working as an external auditor with KPMG for a number of years. My experience as an external auditor has always been that because you're not part of the organization, you're an external person. When you run into conflict, it's a lot easier to be frank with management. So I want, as an internal auditor, I'm interested in knowing, this is what the question is, that if you've ever had any experience having resistance from senior management that have hindered you or your team from successfully implementing or completing an audit. If you've had that experience, and if you have, can you provide us with an example and how you resolve that?
Well, I'm going to say that I have not had the experience of not being able to perform an audit due to a conflict that could not be resolved. There is never I should say never, but usually an audit is, having an audit is not a good time because that's a disruption to a department, an agency, a unit that requires dedicated time and services from individuals while they do their normal job. So there is never a good time, I look at it, for an audit. So, having management resist an audit at times usually it's due to resources available, as well as time crunches and so forth, is that I discuss that and make sure that what and why they have the initial resistance, and determine if there is a better time that would be appropriate for not only them but us as well. Otherwise, I look at it from the standpoint as internal audit is a thing that we're required to safeguard the entity, the assets of the entity for, in this case, would be the population of the citizens of Nashville in the metropolitan area. And so while some management department may not want us to look at certain things or perform our review, I look at it from the standpoint is we are required to do that. And we would do that and work through it the best of our abilities. And hopefully at the end of the review, everybody would understand that the review was a success and that things that we did find or did not find would be communicated to management and would at the end of the day be accepted and realized that internal audit or Mike Hill and his staff were not as bad as they thought they were going to be.
All right. Next question, Mr. Crumbo.
Hey, good afternoon. It's Kevin Crumbo. I'm the Director of Finance. I think somebody explained to you earlier, we have a standard list of questions that we ask each candidate, and they overlap a little bit, sometimes feel a little redundant, but nonetheless, I'm going to go ahead and ask this one, which will maybe backtrack a little bit, is what is your knowledge and level of how municipal governments truly operate?
Well, I'm going to say my knowledge of how municipal governments operate is limited. I have not worked directly in a while with municipal governments. During my time at the state as an investigator as well as a state auditor, I worked with the local governments, municipalities, as well as community help, as well as other community agencies that we were auditing and investigating at the time. But since then, I have, like most of my most recent experience has been on the higher ed side, but as well, it was a government-related organization, complex organization, multiple types of, if you want to call it bosses, where you would have I look at it as say customers that you would represent and report to as well as work with. And I'm getting a lot of feedback while I'm talking right now, so I don't know who and what may be hearing or not hearing. Are y'all hearing me okay?
Mike, Mr. Hill. Yeah.
I hear you fine, but there is some static.
I hear you. I hear you fine, but I hear static. I'll put mute on again.
Are you on speaker, Michael, or are you talking into the phone?
I am on my cell phone.
Okay, but you're not on speaker, right?
I am not.
Okay.
But getting back to my answer, I think that I know Metro government. I was born and raised in that area, and I have kept up with the area from the standpoint of the political atmosphere at different times over the years. My brother still lives there, and so I try to stay up to date on what's going on in the Nashville area. And even knowing all that, I still would like to get a job and still work for the central government. But anyway, I do know that you got, as the internal auditor for a municipality, you have multiple clients that you may work with and work for. If it be councilman, or if it be the mayor, or if it be the audit committee. And then these requests come in, and so you may be limited on what you can and cannot do. At the same time, you try to satisfy these individuals as much as possible and work as many high-risk areas into your review process that you can.
I got you. Okay, so, if you were offered the position here with us in Nashville, how do you think you would continue to expand a knowledge of municipal governments once you get started?
Do you mind repeating that question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's one of our required questions here. Just if you were offered the position here, after that, how would you continue to expand on your base of knowledge?
Well, first I would try to understand and make sure their understanding and the relationship of the department itself, as well as the current working relationships that have been established with internal audit and the audit committee and the segments within the government departments and so forth, as well as the council and the mayor. And then hold discussions with these components, could be individuals or several people at a time, to understand really what the desire is, as well as what the expectations are regarding the internal audit, and also look at how we may be able to work in conjunction and coordinate and collaborate, possibly with other individuals within the involved in government and do this as quickly as possible. But at the same time, I know it's a process. It's not where you run. You know, you start a job and you just not that you hit the ground running, because you want to maintain your momentum that your departments are doing as it relates to the audit plan. But at the same time, you got to try to figure out if the audit plan that you're in the midst of is totally appropriate, and or how things, if anything, not so much changes, but just to make sure that the things are being, the considerations are being placed and being addressed as quickly and as soon as it can be.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next question, Mr. Frazier.
Okay, Michael, this is Charles Frazier, and I represent the Tennessee Society of CPAs, and we really appreciate you being with us. I'm going to divide this into three questions, and maybe just ask the three questions to you individually. So the first question is, please provide an example that showcases your leadership style in managing personnel. Provide an example that showcases your leadership style in managing personnel.
Okay. Well, my leadership style is to be fair as well as available to my staff, as well as to others outside the department as well. It could be managers or executives, or it could be staff members in other departments that are on the front lines too as well. I want to try to keep I know this sounds corny and blasé from the standpoint of an open door policy, but that's my philosophy, is that I want to be approachable. I want not only my staff to be able to approach me, but also individuals outside of my office that have concerns or just things that they want to talk about, that they're not scared to talk to the internal auditor. They're not scared to talk to the Department of Internal Audit. And so I think that's the way that you've got to set the example. And you've got to you got to be that example for not only your staff, so that the others, so that they can see how you react as well as act amongst your internal department, but also your external colleagues as well. An example would be that I try to, I try to treat all my employees the same as much as possible. So this is more of a general statement in that I try to talk to my employees as things that I see that are good, that are their strengths that they can build on. I also try to address their weaknesses as soon as when I say weaknesses, things that I consider maybe a weakness, and discuss those as sooner than later with those respective individuals, and determine how we can best address that, if it be through training, educational components, or maybe just working in a certain area more than what they've worked in the past to get the experience needed. And do this on an ongoing basis, so that at the end, or when a performance evaluation is due, employees are not surprised from a standpoint, from a negative side. Hopefully they are surprised on occasions on the good qualities that they may be getting evaluated on, because you don't usually hit those as often as the negatives. But hopefully they would also have already been told their good points as well as the negative points that I would try to address, like I said, on an ongoing basis.
Okay, very good. And I think you've touched on part of the other two questions, but let me just combine these last two into one. In evaluating employees, how do you handle less than expected performance, and how do you manage conflict within the team?
Well, as I kind of touched on it earlier in the last during the last question answer was that I try to address the negative components as they come up, and as soon as possible, and discuss those with the individual, and give that individual the opportunity to also ask me and talk about and discuss my grade or rating, understanding of that weakness, and also give us the opportunity to discuss back and forth what the solution would be and a goal on how we could accomplish that improvement on the short but also the long range as well. Conflict, case-by-case basis, it's hard to say how you handle conflict. Sometimes it could be just a misunderstanding of how somebody directs or communicates, if it be in writing or verbally, being misconstrued, and so you just got to get people on the same page. And sometimes that means talking individuals separately, and then it depending on what that produces, is getting those individuals together so that they can iron out that difference, and so that you can be the best unit or a better unit from what the events that may have occurred.
Okay, very good. Appreciate it, Michael.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Next question, Councilman Dreffel.
Welcome, Michael. I have a question, then a couple follow-ups based on your answer. Have you been involved in or managed an audit where you suspect a department or organization is exposed to a major risk?
Yes. I mean,
could you give us
I would say a lot of my audits are based on material risk. When you say major, I'm talking about, I'm saying you mean material. So yes, a lot of your internal audit plan is developed on a risk assessment, and so the more material the risks are generated from a particular standpoint, the higher the need is to do those reviews. So you hope eventually, even though those lower risk areas, you get to review those, but they're just not maybe on the same cycle as higher risk areas may be.
Good. Can you provide an example of how you communicated this to senior management?
Well, for one, usually senior management is involved in the process to begin with, along with the middle management, on coming up with the assessment of the areas that are major risk or high risk that have materiality issues, or could have materiality issues if things were found that things were not going like to policy and or to procedural regulations. You usually have in the past, from the standpoint is done preliminary type risk assessments with management and got that information together and produced a proposed audit plan for the year that would show why these areas were considered to be high risk and needed to be on the audit plan for the upcoming year or the upcoming near future. And a lot of that, like I said, is not coming just from the middle management, but also from senior management as well, and getting the preliminary information to come up with that rating and to come up with the plan.
Okay, thanks. I have one more follow-up. Can you provide an experience where you had to stand firm in your results or decision and clearly deliver difficult news without regard to consequences?
Well, I've had to deliver difficult news, especially when you come to investigations, where you are talking about employees, and they could be staff members, or they could be executive level, You're talking about their livelihood, their reputation, it affects not only that individual, but also families as well as departments. And so those are the kind of things that are difficult. And on the majority of these occasions, you have to stand your ground because, but once again, those kind of findings are based on not just substantial evidence, but also test work that your department's been able to complete that actually supports your findings. So while it's difficult to deliver that kind of news, it's got to be done on occasions.
Okay. So you've had to do that a couple times.
I've had to do it several times during my career. It's never fun. I mean, it's the things that you've got to deliver from the standpoint of, okay, you found fraud or you found an individual that has been stealing. So you've got to go back to management and say, hey, it's not the internal auditor's job to fire somebody. It's not the internal auditor's job to prosecute somebody. So you've got to deliver that news to management saying, hey, you've got this executive or you've got this staff member that you trusted for the past 20 years that you need to, my recommendation may be to terminate those individuals. But it's not me to terminate them, and so I've got to be able to stand up and say, okay, why do you recommend terminating? Well, they just stole $50,000 from you. Here's the evidence that shows that, and while you may have trusted that individual, can you trust them again? If you say yes, I really worry about people. But if they say no, I'll say, okay, if you can't trust this individual again, how can this individual be an asset to your division? So you have to make the decision to fire or terminate that individual. You're delivering that news, so that's never good news that I like to deliver. Because I know that person that on the other end of this news is going to make a difficult decision, just like I did from the standpoint of looking at this individual and looking and coming up with the recommendation to them.
Okay, thank you very much. Good.
All right, next question, Mr. Crumbo.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing some of your experience there. Just looking at the higher profile end of that, can you tell us a bit about those higher profile investigations, ones that may have attracted some headlines, and how you use some of your accumulated business acumen, data analysis, critical thinking, so forth, to dig into the details and bring about the corrections that have been needed?
Well, I don't know if they would call them high profile, but they did make the paper, especially in the area of, I shouldn't say they wasn't high profile. My first case was probably the highest profile case I've ever worked on, and it involved Coach Dankirk and Keith Lee. At the time, it was Memphis State University, and the abuse of the Pell Grant program. I was an investigator that did most of the work, the background work, as to identify the misappropriation by Memphis State and their student athletes that actually got them put on probation by the NCAA. But this was back several years ago. That's probably my highest profile as it relates to being in the paper and being a big, because they had just went to the NCAA and were in the process of probably going back again. Some of the other things that I've done, though, over the years at the higher education institutions that I've worked at involved one being credit card, the purchasing card that the individual was given as it relates to the entity and misused it for their own personal gain. We used data. We were able to get 100% download of all of our transactions for a period of time, and was able to use data. We used IDEA versus ACL at the time to help us analyze. Now Excel would do a lot of the same things that IDEA did at that point. Excel was limited at some of the time when I was doing that. But we found an individual that had been able to basically renovate their house using their P card, and that hit the local news. And what we were able to do, though, because of that, we were able to revise the program itself and use the resources they had to train them on using Excel and IDEA to better review 100% of their charges on a monthly basis versus just a sample. And so it improved the program, and we actually had some quick detection of some other irregularities. And when word spread that, oh my gosh, between the internal audit and the program reviewers, they're catching these things, as little as a pair of socks, on an invoice it shouldn't be type situation. I would say the reduction in improper purchases was a big deal as it relates to the program itself. And so I don't want to say we patted ourselves on the back, because it was not just us in the long run. It actually was management listening to our recommendations and making revisions to the program that was make this a successful venture for both of us.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right, and then our last question, Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Reed, before you ask me the question, I do want to make a follow-up statement real quick about the last question. I just want to say that I have been, I don't mind a lot of cases that we've looked at, or a lot of things that we do are checked, and at times can be very hard to, for communication from the standpoint, it involves events and or things that you got to stand up as the chief audit officer and say, hey, this is what we found, this is what we're doing, and this is what we recommend. And that may be talking to management, or it may be in the court of law. I've been I don't want to use the word expert witness, but I've been a witness in cases. So I've been in those difficult situations. I've stood up also in front of audit committees. I stood up in front of board of directors and talked to those individuals when it came to giving and delivering unsettling news. I think I'd be an even better term. And so I don't have a problem with being that instrument that has to deliver the information that we have found and what we recommend, no matter what and how unsettling that information may be.
Okay, thank you. Any follow-up to that? Okay.
All right.
Okay. I'm up. Mike, if you were offered the position of Metropolitan Auditor, what would your plan within the first 100 days be?
Well, 100 days is not a long time. It's when you're in that position, you really find out real quick that 3 months is not what you think it is. It sounds like a long time, but as I kind of indicated earlier, is you've got to keep your momentum going. You've got staff there that have worked without a director at least for a year. Because I know when I applied for this job, it was back in April or May of 19. So I know this group has been working hard and trying to accomplish things over the past year plus without a director or a chief. And so first thing to do would be to get to know your staff, get to know the plan, get to know what the individuals are trying to do, what they have done, and understand what their recommendations on how things need to move, or what their plan was, because they have no clue when somebody would be in place to take this position. So the first few days, weeks, whatever it took, would be to really understand the department and where we're going, and keep it moving, and figure out, if the plan that's in place is where we need to be, or are there things that we need to address sooner than later? And then in the meantime, get to working with the audit committee and then any other resources or departments, committees that would need to be met with, discussed as it relates to immediate needs and or risk regarding their departments and how internal audit can help. But mainly just getting to know the government itself and the players and how everybody interacts with each other, and so that we can move forward at a better, after the 100 days.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Michael, we have about 5-6 minutes left to give you an opportunity to ask any questions or make any closing remarks.
Well, question-wise, what type of, what is the schedule, I guess, from the standpoint of moving forward?
In this process, is it okay if I answer, or Terry, would you prefer to answer?
I think it's okay for you to go ahead, Wanda.
Okay.
I can speak to the charter provision if you'd like. So the charter provision requires that this committee nominate 3 people that they recommend to the Metropolitan Council. So their recommendations will then be presented to the Metropolitan Council, who will then take a vote at one of their council meetings and choose one of the 3 recommended people and appoint them to the position of Metropolitan Auditor. So the council meets twice a month on the first and third Tuesday, but I'm not quite sure. Wanda may be able to speak more specifically in terms of which particular council meetings we would be contemplating. I think it depends on whether the committee feels prepared to take a vote to recommend 3 names at the end of today's interviews, and I think that's probably an unknown at this point.
Yes, Terry, I would agree with that. And for the council meetings, it's usually, I think, up to 10 days before the council meeting where council agenda items have to be added. I know it's several days before. And so at this point, when the audit committee comes to consensus on the names that they want to put forward to Metro Council for a vote, at this point, the earliest meeting would be either the May 5th or May 19th meeting. So we don't know the exact date yet, but Terry was articulated the process. And so, the committee will be having consensus discussions this afternoon.
Okay. All right, so do you anticipate follow-up interviews because of that process, or do you not know at this time, or?
We don't know at this time. You are in a group of individuals who have already been interviewed, this being your second interview. So at this point, we don't necessarily anticipate follow-up interviews, although that is an option. But the audit committee members have been given extensive information on you in your supplemental questions, application, resume. And then with some of the members, this will be their second time to have interviewed you, and some members, it will be their first time. So while we don't necessarily anticipate that could be an option.
Okay. I really don't have any other questions regarding the position or the process.
Okay. Any final words for the committee?
Well, the only final words for the committee would be that I feel, as I mentioned earlier, I feel that everything that I've done professionally has brought me to this point and has prepared me for a position such as the Metropolitan Auditor for the city of Nashville and Metro Davidson County. Being from that area, I just attended my 40th high school class reunion from John Overton High School last year, so and have still a lot of friends in the area. So getting back to Nashville would be a positive for Mike Hill and his family. So I hope that y'all consider me as that candidate for the Metro Auditor. And if I can answer any other questions for y'all or clear up anything in the future, feel free to contact me anytime.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank y'all.
Stay safe and be well.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Y'all too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so it sounds like he has disconnected from the call. How do you all feel that went as far as the flow of everything?
Oh, I was good with it. Thank you.
Okay.
And I do appreciate all you guys getting involved, because it does kind of make it a little bit more personal, and you guys bring a lot more, individuality to each question, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is Kevin. I may try and do a little better job of that. These questions overlap quite a lot, and I think the candidates, if they're answering one part, essentially answer the other. And I'm going to try a little harder at the flow here to see if I can't get you a little better for the two questions I have.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so we have about 7 minutes for our next candidate, so we can either continue to move forward because he is standing by for my instructions, or if you want to take a quick 4 or 5 minute bio break, we can do that as well.
Hey, Wanda,
Yes.
this is Charles,
Yes.
and let me ask you a question. On two of the candidates, on their resumes, the last job experience, there's a little bit of a gap.
Yes.
And Michael is one. His resume goes through June 2018. And John Cashman coming up, his goes through 2017.
Okay.
And I don't know whether we should ask or just let it go. Everybody can see it, but I just want to mention that.
No, you are free to ask. Anything that you see on the resume, application, supplemental questions, you are free to ask about any of it. That is a very valid question. To say your application, your resume doesn't have anything after June 2018. Tell me what you've been involved in. You can certainly do that.
Is there any limitation to the questions? Because I know you want it relatively structured.
You mean on that particular topic or any in general?
Any in general. Sometimes there's other questions I might have. I was just curious.
As long as the subject of the question is not anything about them personally, meaning about their, any of the protected class information, anything about their families, even if they mention anything about their schooling or anything that might, dip a toe into personal information, as long as we avoid that, you can ask.
Yeah, okay, thanks. What HR's told us is that, we want every candidate to answer the same questions.
Yes.
But that's right. Any question is okay.
Yes.
In our follow-up time at the end or during the, anytime, you can ask any question. and obviously it needs to be appropriate, but HR will let you know quickly if it's not. And we're all in business. We're all in business. We kind of know, what those limits are, but HR will let you know. But no, we're required to ask every question, but we can ask any other question we need if we want to. So feel free to ask anything.
Yes, because not each candidate is going to give the exact same answers, and they're going to, potentially answer things in different arenas. And so we want the standard questions asked of everyone, but any follow-up questions that are pertinent, again, to the position itself and doesn't dip into their personal arena, you're good to go.
Okay, sounds good. I just want to make sure.
Yep. All right, so do we need to take about a 3 or 4 minute break, or is everyone okay?
I'm personally okay.
I'm fine.
Let's have a break after the next one. How's that?
Okay, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and,
Okay.
this one is John Valtierra, and I am sending him the instructions right now.
And these resumes can be found, I think it was a February 21st email from Wanda.
Yes. And let me just poke in for just a moment. If your keyboard is close to the phone and you're typing, it can be heard. So if you feel like there's something you want to type or capture or whatever, if you would just mute the phone, that would be very helpful. I'm going to give him about a minute to answer, and if he doesn't, I'm going to call him. John?
Hello?
Hi, is it, John, this is Wanda Hadley. Thank you for being with us this afternoon.
Sure. Hi, Wanda. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Safe and well, I hope.
Yes, that's now the new challenge.
Yes. Well, first I want to introduce you to the audit committee members. This is John Valtierra. And John, what we'll do here in just a moment is I will introduce you to the members of the audit committee who are serving as the interview panel today. They will be asking questions of you in a round-robin format, and when each person asks you a question, they will introduce themselves formally, and then anyone on the panel may ask a follow-up question if there's something in your answer that they want to get more detail. They all have your application, resume, and answers to the supplemental questions. And then at the end of the interview time, with what time we have left, you will be able to ask any questions and or make any final comments to the audit committee.
Sure. That sounds like a good plan.
All right, very good. All right, very good. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. And Mr. Reed, if you would kick us off with the first question.
I sure will. Good afternoon, John.
Hi.
This is Brent Reed. I'm chairman of the committee, and I represent the Nashville Chamber of Commerce. First question is, how has your education and professional experience prepared you for the role of Metropolitan Auditor for Metro Nashville?
Thank you for that. My education prepared me for the ability to think and make sure you comprehend the objective that you're trying to get, or you're trying to solve. So that ability to think also includes being able to be creative and think outside the box. And that's how I was able to obtain a bachelor's and a master's degree in economics, the study of supply and demand. My work experience has taught me to be able to take that thinking and then apply on how to deal with people. And the best way that I've experienced has been a very cooperative way of dealing with auditees and auditee management. Because of internal audit, the specific area that I've got into, or that I've been excited to be in this industry, is you need to build relationships with the auditees in order to help show them the value that you can bring, the value that you are bringing them, and that you need their cooperation in order to fully complete your job and your objective. So my experience, and I've had various difficult audits in which I'm defining difficult right now with meaning the people with the auditee management. And it's taught me to the best way that I've been able to solve and get through and persevere through what I'm defining as difficult audits is open communication, setting clear expectations, and including the auditees in the audit as much as possible. What I mean by that is when we come across, when the audit testing comes in, and you have what we define as an audit finding or an outcome that is not expected, as management has the controls in place for, then we work with the auditee to make sure they understand what has occurred, why it occurred, and how we remediate to make sure that it doesn't occur in the future. And what I have found in my experience has been to work with them and include them in the audit remediation. When you're working with them about audit findings, and that's particularly the most controversial part of an audit, if you will, is the audit findings, because that's where you're noting in audit reports as something you found that was unexpected. So that is what a lot of the audit work, especially the field work, is focused on, is getting the auditee to accept and understand the audit finding, and then including them in a remediation effort to make sure it doesn't occur again. And that's what my education has funneled into my experience, and this experience would be funneled into the position of being a Metropolitan Auditor.
Okay, thank you.
All right, very good. Next question, Councilman Suara.
Hi, John. I'm Councilmember Elijah Zolfa Suara. Thanks for being here.
Sure,
you alluded to, you're welcome, some of the difficulties in your first response. So I wanted to follow up with that. Have you ever had any experience where some of those tough audit situations have resulted in resistance with senior management? And if that happened, has it ever been a situation where that has hindered you or your team from completing your audit? If that has happened, can you provide us with an example and how you resolved it?
Sure. Last year we performed an audit. I managed an audit on one of our wholly owned subsidiaries. And what I'm defining as difficult in this situation was the wholly owned subsidiary didn't really grasp or accept the fact of our Blue Cross Blue Shield internal audit coming in and auditing them to our standards. Now, the tricky part of the political part of this aspect was we're technically a different company coming in to audit a company that we own and that we've loaned money to because of the operating expenses were growing more rapidly than the revenue coming in. And how I dealt with that was the chief operations officer wanted to be included in all aspects of the audit, all emails and all meetings. Well, in talking with her and explaining that open communication that we had of telling them how the audit runs, how we do what we do, and just going through the process with them, and then how including their concerns and how we would remediate their concerns. So, and it did get difficult, more difficult, I should say, when the audit findings started to really increase due to the fact that they were a newer company, and they took a standpoint of, we're new, we're small, this is the reason why it's occurring. And it was a balancing act of giving them credit for being new, but being the eyes and ears for the audit committee, we had to report what we found. An audit is a point in time test of where the operations are, or where the controls are in place at that point in time. So we were able to complete the audit and complete the objective. However, what we missed was the time frame in which the completion was expected. So, and the reason we missed that time frame was the back and forth that we went through to get them to accept the audit findings, and then to have a successful remediation plan for those audit findings to make sure that it doesn't occur again. And the audit findings varied from segregation of duties in the accounting area to succession in management. And when talking or when communicating with the COO, who in all intents and purposes controlled the audit from their aspect, it was the constant open communication with them as to why we found what we found, to get her to agree that there is value in making changes, along with, we gave them somewhat of credit as to where they are now because of how they've grown so fast. And that was kind of a concession that we as internal audit made to be able to see the bigger picture and to get the findings remediated and the controls working in place.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, next question, Mr. Crumbo.
Yeah, good afternoon. It's Kevin Crumbo, the Finance Director. One of the questions we had here was experience with the municipal government. Just looking through your resume, it looks like that probably doesn't apply to you.
I did, my first job out of school was actually working for the state of Illinois, and I'm actually the CFIE, is Certified Financial Institutions Examiner, and that was specific for the state of Illinois. So I do have it's 3.5 years experience dealing with state government, being a regulator as opposed to internal auditor. So I do have some government experience. However, there's a vast difference between being a regulator and being an internal audit.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that perspective.
Sure. What I found, and I've been grateful to have the opportunity to be both, being a regulator is more of a yes or no, is the control in place, is it not? Being internal audit, there is not there's a emphasis in being able to build a relationship with the people that you're auditing, because you're in the same, you're getting your paychecks from the same place. You basically live with these people, as opposed to a regulator who has a state law requirement. I'm allowed to look at your books. I'm allowed to look at your operations when we deem necessary. So it's a different perspective, and it's usually a different way of talking and dealing with auditees. It's more, internal audit has been more of I have found more of a collaborative approach, in which you take the auditees' initiatives, you consider them when you're doing the timing of an audit, when you need to be extremely sensitive to their time, because they have day-to-day duties, and performing an audit, or you performing an audit on them, is really not part of their day-to-day duties. And without their assistance, you have a more difficult time understanding the entire process on how the controls are supposed to work and how they're implemented. And then doing your testing could be it would be more difficult without their assistance. So that's why building that relationship and showing them that internal audit can bring value to them while doing an audit, I have found has been important in my experience. And that's been the difference between a regulator and an internal audit person.
Great. Thank you for that. I don't have any other questions right now.
Sure. Thank you, Kevin.
All right, great. Next question, Mr. Frazier.
Yes, it's really great to have you with us, and I represent the Tennessee Society of CPAs. Now, this question involves managing personnel, and the question involves, could you give an example that showcases your leadership style, and how do you handle less than expected performance and conflict?
Sure. I'm going to answer the second part of the question first, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you. How I handle less than performance execution on an audit or an audit project or what have you on work is when you're having your status meetings, when you're having your we get together to work over audit findings, when you start reviewing work papers. Before that, you level set expectations, and you basically set out how you expect how the audit's supposed to run, including timeliness of it, and you allow them to respond as to the reasonableness, or you at least listen to their side of it. Now, periodically throughout every audit, throughout every project, you have touch points meetings. And when you have these touch point meetings, that's when you kind of summarize what has occurred prior to that touch point meeting, and you compare that to what was the expected outcome to that point. And then you start setting expectations to the next touch point meeting as to what you expect to be completed or at least reviewed. And so how I have dealt with that is at that point in time, you start giving them the feedback as to finding out what's the root cause why they're not meeting expectations. And it has resulted into having to document conversations and discussions, and those documents have led to a lower rating at the end of each audit. At the end of each audit, we give an audit performance evaluation for everyone that's worked on the audit. And in those status meetings, it gives you an opportunity to give that feedback as to if they're exceeding expectations, meeting expectations, or not meeting expectations. And that's how I've handled it. And there have been times at the end of the audit, even having these touch point meetings, if they haven't met expectations, the rating has shown that, along with the documentation as to how we've tried to remediate and how we've tried to set the course for their performance back on course, if you will.
Right.
Now, that was the second part of your question. The first
part was leadership style, and then how you handle conflict.
Sure. The leadership style, I've been fortunate enough to have staff of various age generations and various backgrounds. So how I've been able to handle the staff I've had is I have found it to be more effective to have, when you're dealing with your staff, when you're finding their interests, when you're finding how they work, you manage that person to how and what they need, that type of management. I've had to micromanage some staff, and I've had to really give the free reins on other staff that have been experienced, that want more development, that are looking for the next step in the management. So my leadership style is I try to pinpoint exactly what they need to be as effective as possible. And I also try to obtain, just like you would before an audit, you obtain information about the area, I would try and obtain information from them as to where their interests lie, what types of strengths that they have, what areas do they want to work on, and you try and provide them opportunities where you can when conducting audits. How I've dealt with conflict is there's various levels of conflict. There's the one I just described of not meeting expectations, and how I've dealt with that is you just bring facts. Just like every audit is not opinions, it's you deal with facts. You don't argue facts, you talk about the facts, and then you get to, just like an audit, you get to the root cause as to what is causing this. I've had conflicts with auditees, and what I found to be successful is you have that open communication as to why are we at this point, and you work together to find a comfortable medium, or it does take some compromise. However, you never compromise the integrity of your audit, but you might compromise as to the method you go about it. If they're not feeling comfortable with it, or if they're wanting to be included in every aspect of it. We don't show work papers, obviously, but there are certain parts of the audit which you don't disclose over the auditee, but the entire process, you can include them in everything else that they want to see. I've also had conflict where I've had to fire staff, and that was it was by cause. So how I've handled that conflict is I follow the HR, excuse me, I apologize. I follow the HR protocol as to document what has occurred, and then contact HR and bring them in the loop to make sure that I'm kind of watching, make sure I'm following exactly what I should follow, and then include them in the termination meeting along with, that's after you take the initiative to try and fix what has occurred if possible, and if the employee is willing to change, or it depends on the what has occurred. Sometimes something has occurred, during, I had one instance in which what has occurred from an employee was not able to be adjusted or fixed, and by that it was a outburst to another employee that just crossed the line too far, and that cannot be tolerated. And that's how I handle conflict. I deal with it situation by situation, and that's sort of one of my strengths is I'm adaptable to the current situation of what I need to do. I try to always think of the big picture. How are we going to accomplish the goal at hand, or the objective at hand?
Okay. Thank you so much, John.
Sure, thank you.
All right, next question, Councilman Dreffel.
Yeah, good afternoon. The question is, have you been involved in or managed an audit where you suspect a department or organization is exposed to a major risk? And I have a couple of follow-ups to that.
Sure, I've conducted an audit that's revealed fraud in my experience, and that where I found the fraud led to more risks of the controls that are in place, and the root cause of it was just a very senior personnel over 25 years with the company, and the controls were kind of lax to this person, and unfortunately they had an opportunity and they took advantage of the opportunity. So because that fraud was found, it led to the risk of who else may be doing this based on what we found.
Okay, good, thanks.
Did I answer your question, or?
Yeah, you did. How did you communicate this to senior management? And you sound like you were involved in senior management, but to the decision maker that you had to respond to.
Sure. After confirming what I found, I had to include my senior management, the vice president of internal audit, to go over the findings I had and kind of make sure before I talk to any auditee personnel, make sure and bring my senior management up to staff or up to date as to what is occurring, what it was found, how it was confirmed, etc. Once I made sure that all my ducks were in a row internally for our department, if you will, then I contacted the chief operating officer of that particular company. And I say this because this was when I was working for Trizig. Trizig is an insurance company that owned 14, it's a parent company that owned 14 different insurance companies. So when we're out in the field, we audited a company and they were all their own, they all operated as their own company. So I contacted the chief operating officer and basically reviewed exactly what I found, went through that audit step with them. So I wasn't dealing with opinions. I was just showing him fact by fact of what was found, and it happened to be in his area. So that was sort of an embarrassment for their part. It wasn't a flash of, here, I found something I knew. It was help me see what exactly has occurred here, because I'm finding something. I didn't exactly go to them saying, hey, I found fraud. I went to them in a method of, help me work through this, if you will. I would like your opinion as I'm going through this to make sure that I'm seeing what I'm seeing. And that helped with the acceptance of, number one, an audit is a valued partner, and you work with them. And I have found in my experience that when you're dealing with an auditee, the more you work with them, the more you include them in like a remediation plan. For example, this is what we found. This is root cause. This is a plan that we're thinking about may help or bring value to make sure this control is in place. What are your thoughts? We don't want to make you, if you think it's going to be more or make you inefficient, that's not our goal. But you include them in that, and it also helps them have more ownership in the remediation plan. That's how I've found out in my experience.
So it
but to go back,
collaborative approach.
it is a collaborative approach, yes. But to finish off the answer, and I'm sorry, am I getting too long on it?
No, I think you're
Okay.
good. I think you answered that second part of the question. The other one is it really asks if you stand firm in results. Is there a position that you ever took that you had to negotiate your results?
No. There have been times where, like I mentioned about a compromise before and how they're presented. The results, I guess, you can consider it a compromise when it started off as a finding and you confirmed it as a finding, but you make sure the audit committee is aware of it. And what I have done in the past is move that finding into an audit observation. In our audit reports, we have audit observations, and they typically talk about any kind of specific details of the audit, what has occurred during the audit. So I guess I looked at that as the audit committee and senior management that received the report was still aware of what occurred. However, it was a compromise with the auditee to not have it as an audit finding, but list it in the audit observation. So it covered internal audit's perspective as to it was reportable. However, the method in which it was reported, due to the circumstances that the auditee brought up, it was to their acceptance, and I did find it reasonable after some back and forth in working with them. And that also helps build credibility with the department, that when you're willing to work with them and see it through to the bigger picture, they take notice of that, and I think they appreciate that. That has been my experience.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right, next question. Mr. Crumbo?
Yes, hello again. Hey, so, Metro government, we find ourselves in the media quite a bit. Have you had some cases amongst your experience here that rise to the level of a high-profile audit that you can tell us about?
Yes, I was part of managed an audit at one of our in New Mexico, and essentially what had occurred was due to the high inventory of provider maintenance and provider pricing. I'm talking specifically of Blue Cross Blue Shield. Due to high volume, the senior management there actually put on a project in which they removed the current controls to satisfy the inventory, in which the inventory is there's quality and there's also timing of when items need to be performed when dealing with our providers. Let me back up 1 second. A provider would be a physician, a hospital, what have you, when it's dealing with the healthcare. So by removing the controls or putting like a memorandum of not having to follow the current controls, what they did was they lowered the expectations to really get the work done when you're able to get the work done. And when I performed the audit, we had to go by what was the latest criteria on the controls, meaning the timeliness, meaning the quality percentages, because we have to audit to what the last criteria was, because this project or this decision to remove the controls, it was more of an ad hoc management decision that was extremely risky, and that was without any kind of forethought possibly of the future. This audit, the audit results were so difficult to accept that it turned into when we do an audit, we have we give them a different colored diamond report. A blue diamond would be controls are adequate. A yellow diamond our controls require improvement. And then a red diamond is controls require significant improvement. This was a red diamond report. This went straight to the audit committee, and I did have to do a presentation to explain what was found, what was the root cause, and it also impacted our SOC 1 report for New Mexico into a point where it was a qualified report. And so that audit got very high visibility to our internal senior management, because getting that qualified report really hurt us when you have those SOC 1 reports are distributed to all of our customers. And to show that type of error rate in a particular plan or a particular state was really quite indicating that we had significant problems. And it resulted in the vice president of operations for that plan, provider operations, resigning afterwards.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
All right, Mr. Reed?
Okay. Thanks, John. Okay, if you were offered the position of Metro Auditor, what would your plan be within the first 100 days?
My plan would be in the first 100 days. That's a very good question. My first step would be set clear expectations with the audit committee and gather the risks that concern them as to the Metro's universe, and to make sure that I understand their aspect and their perspective. The second point would be to meet with the staff and set expectations as to my thoughts for the department and really gather their expectations of what do they want in a leader, what do they want in a department going forward. The next step I would have in the first 100 days would be to review prior audit reports and to gain knowledge as to what was found prior to me joining and seeing if there was any kind of noticeable trends on the findings. The next point I would think that would be meet with the department heads really to ascertain their current concerns regarding ongoing risks to make sure that understanding where they're coming from, their perspective, and to introduce myself as meeting on behalf of the Internal Audit Department. And then to review the current audit plan and to see if I may if there may be reason to suggest any changes with all that, but that may take longer than 100 days. As I saw, the Metro's universe can cover anything from water services to the health department. But that would be my first steps in 100 days.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other follow-up questions from the interview panel? All right. Well, John, we have a few minutes here. If you have questions of the interview panel and or want to make final remarks, you have the floor.
That's all right. Let me interject a question.
Okay.
John, it shows your last on our resume, your last employment up through June 2017. Can you update us as to what your experience is since then?
My experience is, several of these situations that I've mentioned have occurred after June of did you say the experience is June of 17?
Yeah, after your resume goes through June of 17 through as Director of Internal Audit for San Diego Unified School District, what have you been doing since then?
I apologize. I believe you have a different resume.
Okay.
Yeah, Tom, that's on another campus.
Yeah, this is John Valtierra.
It's all my bad then. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
So any other follow-up questions from the interview panel? Okay. John, you have the floor.
Thank you, Wanda. Thank you, everyone, for your time you've taken today to talk with me. And these questions are really too general to each and every one of you. How do you measure success in the role of Metropolitan Auditor?
Kevin, you'll give it a shot?
Kevin, are you still on with us?
Yes, I'm here.
I think, was that Mr. Reed maybe teed that question to you? Is that correct?
So, yeah. I'm sorry, Brock, I can't hear you very well. So I think the question is how do we measure success? At least for me, it is making sure that we're taking a comprehensive view of the metropolitan government, that we're looking for two things, really. One is, are we doing things right? Many of our performance audits that we do, and how we're selecting those and what those results are. And it's really kind of a mixed bag between who follows up on those results, whether it's internal audit or whether it falls to the finance department. And then there are the special requests. We've had one of those recently with respect to our schools here and making sure that we meet the needs of those
an independent position. So success would be obviously, analysis of risk, a quality plan, quality execution, quality staff, those things. And, while you're an integral part of Metro, you're also an independent part of Metro. So it's unique, and it's I would think one of the better ones in the country, but just to kind of continue that progress.
Okay. Thank you for that. Were there anyone else that wanted to answer that, or I just wanted to give you an opportunity?
I think from the Metro Council side, the ability to take on and ensure that we develop a high degree of confidence in our departments and willing to challenge, challenge those departments to make sure that we're doing everything above board and again, with the smallest amount of risk so that constituents have a sense of confidence in what we're doing.
Okay.
And for me, I look at it as there is a plan at the beginning of the year that the internal audit department has in terms of audit to be completed, work to be done throughout the year. And so success will be out if we do according to that plan, what are the follow-up measures, what are the things that were done. So just like any position, was the plan adhered to, and if there's any deviation, why, and so that's the way that I will look at it.
Okay. Thank you for that. My next question is, what recent accomplishments have meant the most for IA internal audit from your perspective?
So this is Kevin. I'll kick that one off again. It's really been our performance audits. One of the concerns every finance director has is, you go through a budget process and appropriate dollars for one thing or another, and then you hope that those things are spent responsibly throughout the course of that appropriation. And we have the usual controls that you might expect inside of a finance department, but getting that next set of eyes from the IA has been really, really helpful. And it's been good to know, frankly, that most of those things come back without any, big significant findings or anything that needs a major correction. So I know that some would always be in the hunt for that big, headliner, that big, piece of drama that's going to, hit the media. But in my case, I'm glad to know, at least in my short tenure here at the Metro government, that most things operate as they should. So that's really my response to that.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah.
For me, I like that our internal audit department is independent and they're very thorough. I think one of the risks with internal audit department is because they sometimes will go with management. And so making sure that they're following the rules. And so what I've seen and what I love with my short experience is that we have a very competent and independent and objective group that does a very phenomenal job. And so overall, I like that.
Okay. Thank you for that. And if there's no other answers, my next question, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see, both it's a two-pronged question, internal audit facing and then Metro government facing in the near future?
Well, John, this is Charles Fraser, but I think just the continuing challenge for almost any organization is just engaging the right person, qualified people. And I think the internal audit area, City of Nashville, is just so fortunate that we have essentially long tenured people. We have low turnover and just the highest quality of person, which just allows the audit of departments to go smoothly. And even when there are differences found, they're communicated in a very appropriate way. And so I just think personnel communication is just one of the biggest challenges that any organization has.
Thank you for that, Charles. Yeah, so this is Kevin again. I would say a phrase that I use quite a lot is inspire the public trust. And I think we have a pretty high degree of that now. We've had some media and so forth to the contrary, and we've certainly had an event or two that would not inspire that. But day in, day out, I think our Metro government does a really good job, and I'm really hoping that IA continues to be a really reliable source of information and confirmation that, we're earning that trust each and every day. Thank you, Kevin. Yep. If there aren't any answers, that's all I had as far as questions. My next question would just be what are the next steps?
John, the process per Metro Charter is that the Audit Committee identify 3 candidates that they would send to Metro Council to be voted upon, and they would recommend those 3 candidates. Our Metro Council meets every month on the first and third Tuesdays of the month. It would all be predicated on the Audit Committee coming to consensus on who those 3 candidates would be. The next available council meeting would be May 5th. That would be the earliest. The one after that would be May 19th. Once Metro Council votes, the person, who the person would be to be appointed would move into that role. So it, at this point, it would depend on the Audit Committee and their coming to consensus, but those would be the next steps in the process. And as we have along the way, would keep you posted as to progress and those sorts of things. Yep.
Thank you very much. If I may, I still have the floor.
Absolutely. We've got about 5-6 minutes left.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just wanted to reiterate, thank you so much for your time. I'm excited and honored to be considered a possible candidate or a possible person to be placed in this position. I appreciate the feedback, and I appreciate your time, and I'm excited for the possibility. So thank you so much, and it's really well appreciated.
Very good. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Rita.
It was a pleasure talking with everyone also.
Thank you, John. We appreciate your time, and we will be back in touch.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day and stay safe, everyone.
Same to you. Be well.
You too.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, so he has signed off. Our next interview we have scheduled in about 6-7 minutes, so let's go ahead, and if everyone's okay, let's take a quick bio break, and we'll come back together in about 5 minutes if that works.
Okay, sounds good.
Sounds good.
You can just keep the line open.
Kevin's here. Yeah, Brock's here.
All right. Councilman Suara? I'm here. Okay, very good. All right, well, I am going to, if you're ready, I'm going to go ahead and send instructions to our next candidate. who is Deborah Jenkins. Deborah?
Hello.
Hi, Deborah. This is Wanda Hadley. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. I was looking for a text. I thought maybe I'd missed something, but you were right on time.
Thank you. We're glad that you have time to speak with us today. And I'm going to introduce you to the panel. This is Deborah Jenkins. She is our, we're going to be interviewing her. Deborah, the Audit Committee is serving as the interview panel, and for each of them, they will ask you questions in a round-robin format. You can feel free to ask the question, be repeated, and then any of the members can ask a follow-up question based on your answers. And then at the end, with what time we have left, you have the opportunity to ask questions and or give final remarks to the panel. The panel today is made up of Chairman Brack Reed, Vice Chair Charles Frazier, Finance Director Kevin Crumbo, Councilman Zulfat Swara, and Councilman Tom Dreffel. So if you don't have any questions, we'll get started. Are you good?
I am good. Actually, the only question that I had starting out was, I know there was a new election because we had started this process several months ago. I know I guess it was last summer, down in person and did an interview.
Yeah.
What are the new members that I haven't actually seen or spoken with the first round of this?
All right. So Mr. Crumbo, Councilman Dreffel, and Councilman Swara are on the Audit Committee now, and they were not on the committee last year when you first interviewed. So the two that have interviewed you in person that are on the call is Chairman Brack Reed and Vice Chair Charles Frazier.
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure how the complement had changed since last summer.
Yes. The other one who had interviewed you in person last year was Vice Mayor Jim Schulman, and he was not able to be with us today, but we do have a quorum.
Okay.
All right. Well, Mr. Reed, I will tee it up to you for you to kick us off.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Deborah.
Hello.
This is Brack Reed. Thank you for your time. How has your education and professional experience prepared you for the role of Metropolitan Auditor of Metro Nashville?
Well, I've been with the City of Bowling Green since 2006, so I have several years as actual internal audit capacity. I had a short time prior to that with the State Audit Office, and then fortunately for me at the time, the City of Bowling Green opened up as a newly created position, so I transitioned to Bowling Green, which is where my hometown is. I have a bachelor's in accounting that I received from Western Kentucky. I also have an associate's degree from my time when I thought that I might actually want to go into the medical field originally, and then found out I was much better at finding things that were wrong, ended up transitioning to accounting, and then found that I didn't like tax, but I liked audit. So I've kind of transitioned over the years through that. I'm very big on continuing education. I've got my CGAP, my CFE, CICA, which is just a Certified Internal Controls Auditor. That's kind of a newer one. I'm not sure if they even have a test ready for that yet. I actually was or am in the process of studying for my CIA. That I had scheduled for April 3rd to take in Nashville, but due to COVID-19, they shut down, and so I'm not sure when I'll be able to sit for that exam. But over the years, I've tried to be active within and try to learn things. I'm actually serving my second year as chair for the Education Committee for a national group that's the Association of Local Government Auditors, ALGA, if any of you are familiar with them. And as the chair of that, that's what I do. I coordinate education, whether it's webinars, regional trainings, things to that nature. I'll do trainings myself, either presentations at conferences or a different training institute. So I try to do that whenever I can as well. So definitely an active, continue to learn type of person.
Okay, thank you.
All right, very good. Next question, Councilman Suara.
Hi, Deborah. Thanks for being here. Looking at your resume, it shows that the Internal Audit Department, you were the first one there, and you had to do a lot of things and propose a lot of changes and starting afresh. So the question that I have for you is, at that point or throughout your career in Kentucky, have you experienced any resistance with senior management in such a way that it hindered you or your team from successfully completing your audit? And if so, can you provide us with an example and how you resolved it?
Pushback is something you definitely have to deal with. There's been several instances that come to mind. First was our payroll system. We were by exclusion, we assumed everyone was working 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, unless we were told otherwise, yet 95% of our staff was eligible for overtime. I really tried to push for a more accountable timekeeping system citywide, because I kept doing audits and kept finding, large issues that we had in various departments. The city manager, because Bowling Green is a city manager form of government versus a mayor, and the city manager was completely adamantly against having any type of accountable system. He said, we do not work in coal mines, we are not punching cards, which is a very old way of, there's a lot more easy ways to do things, but it basically took some time and some persistence. I had to keep basically building my case, doing audits within fire department, police department, fleet, showing with each of these why it's an issue, why it's not just an issue in one department, in multiple departments, and the risks that were involved in it. And we eventually went citywide to a timekeeping system. Police, fire, everyone's on board. That is one example. Another one that I can think of is our ethics hotline. I administer that as well. That was another thing that they just thought would be a groundhog type of issue that would cause more problems than it would solve. So it took me from 2006, and I finally implemented a system in 2013. And then again, that was that same type of issue. You had to keep showing to department heads, to elected officials, to the city manager, hey, these are issues, these are problems we've had, these are things that if employees would have had another way to contact us, another way to anonymously give me the information, I could have solved this, we could have, addressed this a long time ago. It wouldn't have went on as long as it did. So we just kept at it, and it took me, that was another one that they just had absolutely no interest in. And it did take some time, but eventually we've had it since 2013, and I think now that ignorant because it's everywhere. We just didn't know it was there, and we turned a blind eye to it. So that was a really nice thing when he retired a couple of years ago to actually become an advocate for having those types of things in place when he was so against it originally.
Thank you. All right. Next question, Mr. Crumbo.
Hey, good afternoon. So it's pretty clear you have a lot of experience here with management of cities, municipalities, and so forth. If you were to take this position, how would you envision continuing to increase that knowledge, particularly for a larger municipality like Nashville?
The biggest thing that you fight, or that I see you fight over time and experience in anything, is complacency. That's always a big concern and fear of mine, is that you get either yourself or other staff that just become complacent because they think they know the answer before it comes. Some of the things just after however many years I've been at the city, when I tried to take advantage of when we had a new city manager that came on board, which used to be our CFO, and this past year, we've actually revamped on the reports. I found out that, elected officials, senior managers, the public, they're never going to read a 40-page report. So I've got a one-page highlight sheet that now I've been playing with to put it out, kind of what did we find and what did we do. I've actually implemented site visits because with prior management, they just wanted me where I was auditing, and I found that there's benefit to people seeing the audit staff more than just when they're in the middle of an audit. So we've actually came up with a listing of just different facilities throughout the municipal government. And so I block off a little bit of time every week just to go through a rotation, show up at places, walk through, say hi to staff, see what things are going on, how they're doing. Once they get a little bit of a rapport or start to learn, hey, there's somebody that's going to try to help me instead of trying to ding me after the fact with an audit, then now I've seen some of those things actually help. Sometimes management will come to me, actually more and more all the time, so that's kind of a thing to balance too, as to, hey, we're getting ready to do this, or we've just implemented that. Can you come over and give us a few tips? We've opened a new place that we never took cash before, now we've got it implemented, or we think we do. Can somebody just kind of look to see, are we on the right track? And so some of those kind of consulting things, I think has helped add value in their eyes, which helps me do my job. So when it comes to the bigger scope of it, you have the same core public safety type things, but I would probably try to get out and learn as much as I can about the additional departments and agencies that you all have that we don't encompass under the city umbrella in Bowling Green. And take advantage of contacts. That's why I love my ALGA group, because you can always find someone across the nation that's got some experience or a similar issue, and kind of tap into those contacts as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next question, Mr. Frazier.
Hi, Deborah. This is Charles Frazier, and I represent the Tennessee Society of CPAs. And my question relates to the managing of personnel. And I guess I really have to ask two questions. First of all, I guess I couldn't tell from your resume if you have a staff that you supervise, or you're pretty much a one-person shop. Because the question kind of relates to supervising people. And you might, first of all, just address, the extent to which you do or have experience in supervising people.
Okay. Now, at Bowling Green, I am a one-person shop. That is not due to my request, or the audit committees, because every year they're asking when they're going to add someone to it. I have utilized some lower level interns, people to help, those sorts of things. But even though at this point with the city government, I don't have direct reports to me, I am still very involved in the senior management team and process. So any of we have monthly meetings, so similar to any of the other department heads, if I haven't been completing one for myself or for direct staff, I still have been learning and being involved with a lot of the issues that are personnel-related issues that pop up through time.
I'm sure you're in the middle of everything that goes on, behind the scenes in Bowling Green. So I guess my next question would have to be a hypothetical question. So in the event that you had a rather large department or staff, three items I'd like to ask you about that. How would you describe your leadership style? Second, how would you handle a person who performs at a subpar level? And third, how do you think you would manage conflict among your people? Now, can you do
All
that?
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. I believe as far as management style, I would not consider myself an authoritative type of boss or leader in that capacity. I know we've done a lot of the different things and what your styles are, that type of stuff with our senior management team. And with my leadership style would be more kind of inclusive of, hey, get people's opinions, but know that it's not a democracy per se, municipal government. So you kind of have to get input from the right people. One thing that I'm really big on, no matter where I'm auditing at too, I've always really tried to pay attention to who the superstars are, whether that's within a department, within a key area, within staff in general, because those people are you really key in on when you can. And then sometimes just trying to do little things, my grandmother was always big at that, hey, the little things are what count, and the little things are what people remember. So whether it's, I know the first time I had an audit where everyone, the division, the audit started due to an investigation. Had to get rid of their management. Everyone's terrified. Everyone was, afraid for the job. Nobody knew what was going on. And when I went back to do the follow-up, I actually went through, and that's the first time I'd done it, I bought them barbecue lunch and just said, hey, guys, just to let you know, you guys rocked it. The fact that how far you've come from the last time till now, even though, I wasn't their manager by any means. I was the one coming and auditing it, but just doing something to recognize, hey, you guys have come so far. So sometimes I get that positive reassurance of stuff. When it comes to subpar employees, I think that's really twofold. One, have they ever actually had the training they need to be successful? Or what their tasks are match with the style of person they are. So some of those soft type skills, am I putting somebody that only likes numbers and having them go out and do all the interviews? Because that wouldn't match. You kind of have to, I guess, pay attention and try to find out what type of personality styles the people have, because you want to line them up to be as successful as you can. So, some people are naturally better at writing. Some people are more on the analytical end of things, and everywhere in between. So I wouldn't want to just say, hey, these people they're a subpar employee from before, and expect that now, so let me just shove them off in a corner, or give them, kind of keep them out of people's way. It would be more trying to find out what's the root cause of that. I think whether you're doing an audit or dealing with people, you got to find out what the issue is. Have they just been, no one's listened to any of their opinions for so long that they just don't bother giving them anymore? Or is it they're, worried that they don't have the skills they need to do it? So it's, that my take on what you would do with them. Plus, you got to set them up a plan. A lot of times, I see this when I go in and do the audits. You know, this manager will fuss about this employee for forever, or fuss about this different issue. And I was like, well, have you ever, hey, they always mess up on things. Well, have you ever trained them in Excel? Well, no. They said, well, you took them from a worker bee. Take fire, for example. They were a firefighter, and then they went into management. Well, we do a great job training them how to be a firefighter. We don't teach them well how to be a manager and do the back end of things and do the budget stuff. So, you just have to make sure their skill sets match. So that's kind of where I would start with a subpar employee. And then managing conflicts. I do a lot of that within audit stuff just because sometimes it's people trying to file a report on someone, and it's not really that anybody's done anything wrong. It's just that you've got some strong personalities that don't mix. So it's that one, depending on what the conflict is, can be tricky, and depending on the hierarchy within the organization, whether they're in the same division or if it's in different areas. So, managing that conflict is really just trying to, one, figure out what in the heck's going on to begin with, and then two, making sure people know what their boundaries are and what the expectations are. So those are kind of key things. If people are into it, are they into it because of personality, or is it work and productivity issues? And then kind of go from there.
Okay.
So does that answer your three questions?
Yeah. No, that's fine. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Next question, Councilman Dreffel.
Hi, Deborah. I have a question with a couple of follow-ups. Have you been involved in or managed an audit where you suspect a department or organization exposed to a major risk?
Major risk, like a financial risk or a safety risk, or just
A major financial risk.
trying to think financial-wise. Well, one was tied to an investigation, so I'm not sure if that really came out through an audit, but it was for that.
You brought it out to any risk, and just it's really about conflict and how you handle it.
Okay. Which one's coming to mind? Well, financial risk, I would say, even though materiality to our financial statements wasn't as really impactful on it, but to that group it was at our Hobson House Commission. The executive director ended up doing a lot of things that he should not have done. And the impact due to the lack of controls, that from the time that they didn't have it incorporated on the board. For example, he took advantage of a person rotating off of the board in order to get himself the only person that had access to the bank accounts. Well, as soon as he had that, then of course, as you can imagine, things just exploded. So I actually started doing for several years, once a year, started doing training for all of our agencies, just one time a year. That was internal control and basics of fraud, just to say, hey, if you've got an agency, make sure at least these things are in place for our city agencies to try to help them set up the basic fundamental controls to keep themselves from imploding like the Hobson House almost did. Then on outside of that risk, really with us was payroll. We had I thought, and that's how we sold it, a huge risk with potential labor issues because we weren't managing people's time, we weren't tracking it. So many of our people were eligible for overtime, eligible for comp time, eligible for all those things. Payroll's 60% of our budget, almost 70. And if we were to have gotten many labor complaints issues, we wouldn't have had any way to back ourselves up prior to changing how we did why that was one of the big pushes. That and our P cards. We had terrible, horrible P cards. Wouldn't stop a transaction for anything because there were no controls built into the cards. So we had to change companies, change banks, and do those sorts of things.
You go back to the example you just discussed. How do you communicate that problem to senior management?
Oh, did I lose you?
I'm still here.
Are you still there? Okay, sorry. Okay. Yes, I'm here. So, Deborah, what was your question?
You gave me an example just a few minutes ago about where you had a suspect of major risk and sort of talked around that a little bit.
Oh, I think he's cutting out on me. Can someone else try to repeat his question?
Yes, Deborah, his question is, you had mentioned about having to communicate or finding those issues and everything, and his question was around how did you communicate those concerns?
It may be my signal. Just one moment. Let me step out. The joys of technology working from home and being at home.
What about now? Can you hear clearer now?
Yes, I can hear you now. I've stepped outside. It might be my connection.
Okay. Councilman Druffel, do you want to try to ask your question again, or I can repeat it for you?
Yeah, can you hear me now okay, Deborah?
Yes.
Okay. It was alluded to the earlier point about you have someone that was exposed to a major risk. How do you communicate this to senior manager or the next step up to how do you communicate that?
Oh, well, what I'll normally do is try to go to whichever level I think can make the change and impact it. So if it's something that can be handled at an agency level, then you go to whoever that director is. This time we couldn't go to the director because he was the problem. So you have the board on top of it. I hesitate to jump to the top initially, just because I think that kind of undermines some of the department head authority and level and ability to fix things. But if it is an issue that I think goes across multiple areas and across different departments and divisions, then that's when it's something that I discuss with usually at the department head meeting. I'll put it on an agenda item, and when we have our monthly meeting with all the department heads, and bring it up to them. Hey, sometimes if the department's okay with me discussing the issue, particularly as them, I'll discuss it that way. Otherwise, I'll be like, hey, I know a couple of departments were having this happen. Is this an issue that you all are having? And what are some ways that you think we can address some of those, and just try to indicate what that risk is. So with the payroll, that's something that touches everyone. So that, of course, had to go to what would be the city manager level, which is right beneath the board, because he's the one's responsible for implementing everything. But if it's something that's department specific, then I would go to that division, communicating, so making sure that the department head knew what was going on, but I was the division manager or the department head.
Okay, thanks.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good enough. One more, Deborah. Please also provide an experience where you had to stand firm in your results or decisions and clearly deliver difficult news without regard to consequences.
Okay, I'm sorry. I stepped back in. I thought my connection fixed. I heard the regard to consequences.
Yeah, I'll be glad to repeat it. You ready, okay?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem at all. It says, please also provide an experience where you had to stand firm in your results or decisions and clearly deliver difficult news without regard to consequences. You get it okay?
Yes, I got that okay. That would probably be news with, now this wasn't something that you would call a high risk area, just one that they didn't really want to talk about, was our parking citations. Politically, nobody really wanted to deal with it. We had a terrible system in place. that we basically never tracked them. There was the only people that pay them are the people that are honest because we didn't send anything out. Police chief was not happy. He thought it had terrible just PR to it, and when I actually threw out the audit, ended up speaking with our, making a phone call to our prior human resources director because there was some of the pertinent information. She had retired within like the past year, and I spoke with her, and I recall being in a meeting with the police chief and the city manager and the current and the police chief kind of lost his cool when he heard that I had, it was basically a slam the documents on the table. What do you mean? You spoke to blah, 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 blah. And I had to sit there. Of course, I could feel the boils and dries, but that's not going to get me anywhere, in those situations. And I basically just had to stand firm and look him in the eye, and I told, keep my voice steady and tell him absolutely. I will talk to whoever, whenever I feel it's pertinent for the information that I have, for the recommendations that need to be made. And if you don't think you can pull your composure back, then we will need to probably cancel this meeting and schedule an additional meeting. I think if I would have, and at that point, I think he brought himself back in because he knew that he looked, frankly, like a jerk at that point in front of his boss and mine. But I think some personalities, that's how they kind of try to get their way. There's sometimes kind of the pull people into reacting back and escalating things. But you have to have those conversations before those meetings because over time you learn the personality of the people and what you do need to do. And so I think that was one of those cases where if I would have either cowered or if I would have gotten very emotional and blasted back at him, nothing would have happened. So it was basically having to be firm but calm. And he was able to bring back in, and we followed through. And I ended up writing the finding because it needed to be in there, and have them kind of update the way that they do their parking citations. Because it was one of those where the only people that ever paid were the honest people, because we had no way of tracking anything with their own system. So.
All right. Next question, Mr. Crumbo.
Yes, I think your response to this last question really answered the one that I have for you, so I'll pass it on to Mr. Reed.
Okay. 2 for 1, that's never bad.
That's right.
Okay.
If you were offered the position of Metropolitan Auditor, what would your plan be for the first 100 days?
First 100 days. I'd say the first 30 would be mainly focused on the audit staff themselves. You kind of have to know who you have, what they're good at, what they're not, what projects are going on, kind of learn the basics of what's in the department itself. Then at that point would branch out more. That's when I would probably try to reach out to either key departments that, everybody has those departments that you either not had a great relationship with audit in the past or do, and try to usually start with those, because hopefully there are some audit advocates within the organization, especially as a new lead in the audit department. You need to know, kind of historically who are the people that have seen some value added from the audit function, and then also try to reach out and at least begin some sort of rapport with the ones that have historically had pretty bad relationships. I think that's, that happens everywhere too. So those would probably be the first 60 is just trying to hit those first points and try to get a good grasp as to what's going on. I don't know when you had your last peer review or when that might be coming up, and or how many lingering issues that you have out there. I did look at the 2019 report that was issued, I guess, in January or February, so it looks like from the recommendations that are presented, there's some sort of a management commitment to what they say they're going to do, so that's good. It doesn't look like there's a ton of long lingering issues just based off that first report. And then, so that'd probably take your first 60 to 90 and really just try to lay the groundwork as to, hey, what are the things that's been successful? What are the things that are not? And how do we fix those? And relationship building, even though auditors have to stay independent, as far as what they do, you kind of always have to walk that fine line and balance of things. I think it still does a lot to help audit out, to help the municipality when people can at least start to build some sort of a rapport, so they do start coming to you for some things. You try to transition from the ask for forgiveness to the make sure we're doing it right first. Because we did have, even back in 2006, I had several a couple department heads, but several division heads that were like, it's fine, we just ask for forgiveness later. No. So, and seeing that change over the past few years to where now, I get random calls and just trying to, it may not even be something that really I have to take action on. They just know that where I've had to read so many policies and I've had to look at so many different things that it's kind of audit the unique vantage point of an organization. So I always try to help out with those random phone calls. I got one Friday when I was cleaning out my pantry from the deputy chief at police about some sort of donation they were wanting, and it was more just, we want to make sure we're doing it right. How do we do it? So even though those might take a couple minutes to do, I take a mental note. Okay, good. They're reaching out to me, so that's a good thing. And I would want them to be able to kind of do that within staff too, because I just think that helps overall when they know you're not just going to slam them.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Deborah. Well, we have about 5 or 6 minutes left, and I wanted to turn the floor over to you if you have any questions of the interview panel, and if you have any final comments you'd like to make.
Okay. I know as the hiring processes go, this has been a fairly lengthy one from last summer through till now. So how much is even left on the current term that they're looking to fill?
This term goes through June 30th, 2022. And the new term after that would, of course, be July 1, 2022. And the rest of this process, and a part of that has been scheduling, been elections, been a lot of different challenges is...
your tornadoes and everything else. I understand.
Yeah. So the rest of the process is that once all the candidates are interviewed, the interview panel audit committee would go through a consensus, and Metro Charter states that they need to identify 3 candidates ranked, sent to Metro Council for their vote. And the next council meetings, Metro Council meets first and third Tuesdays of each month, and so the next meeting that would be able to beat the deadline to get on the agenda, the earliest would be the May 5th council meeting, and after that would be the May 19th meeting. based on the result of consensus with the audit committee. So at that point, or along the way, we would stay in touch about where we are and what timelines are going to look like, as we have been doing. So that's the remainder of the process.
Okay, so when that ranked listing is provided on the council's agenda, is that when that list becomes public?
Yes.
Okay, because that is one of those things also you kind of need to make sure that you don't want to actively be, hey, I've been interviewing for this position, but if you get closer to that point, that's when it becomes pertinent to really where I would need to go to my boss.
Right, and
yes,
and this meeting today, actually the interviews today, will be made public as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's one of the, because I know that some things are held until a certain point and then they become public. So it is kind of that timing of it when to really approach anyone.
Right. Right. What else? Any other questions?
Once it goes to your commission to be voted on your rank, what do you see as the timeline for having someone in place and starting?
That is a little more challenging as far as a specific date. The understanding at this position that, there would have to be notice given, and if relocation is part of the process, that would be taken into consideration as well. So it would depend on, when the council vote was taken, and then the components of the position, salary, et cetera, start date. But it would be discussed with the reasonableness, based on as I said, the position and where the person is now, and then having to look for housing and relocation and all of that. So it's not
right, which I'm sure is a challenge in your area given how hot Nashville was anyway on real estate, let alone issues you've got with tornado cleanup. So
that's a little more of an inexact answer. There's a lot of variables that go into that, but yes, it would all be taken into consideration. In other words, we wouldn't expect to make the offer and the person have to be there within 2 weeks. Of course, we always want to work as soon as practical and as possible, but it would certainly be taken into consideration.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And I think now, I think the other thing that I know there's new members and I know there's some returning members. I believe Mr. Reed, if I looked correctly, is probably the longest termed audit committee member still remaining on the board. I would just, I guess in either his words or some of yours, like to get at least a little bit of a feel as to what's really, from your perspective, the current working relationship as you see it between audit and management. Is this something that's, worked fairly well? Are there, issues that or things that are going to need to actively be worked on and fixed right out of the right out of the box? Or kind of what is that relationship?
Well, I've watched this, this audit function go from being really part of the administration to becoming, by charter, independent. So we have an independent internal auditor that gets funding through the, the council, but it's independent. So, and I've also seen it really gain a lot of respect and an integral part of our metropolitan government. And we have legislative folks on the committee. We have, part of the mayor's office on the committee, and they can speak to what their relationship is and their experience. But right now there's a lot of respect for the audit function, and gets a lot of requests for people saying, hey, I'm getting ready to take this over new. Would you come in and make sure everything, we gotta, we understand what's going on. And like you said, you've read a lot of the reports, you see a lot of the reaction, and not everything's always smooth, but it is very much an integral part and an important part of our metropolitan government, and I think that will continue. So, and if anybody else has any other comments, because we do come from different perspectives. Me and the vice chair are right now the independent part, since we're appointed by third parties, but we do have council representatives as well as the director of finance, which is our administration.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to let them get their perspective on, the role of internal audit within our government.
Yeah, this is Kevin, the finance director, and I've just been on board here about 6 months or so, and my observation is that the current functionality of this independent group and my department's very good. In an earlier interview, I was just really complimenting the internal audit group on the performance audits that are very meaningful to us. I think it demonstrates our taxpayers that most of our functions of the metro government are working quite well. So, to my knowledge, things are fine, and I don't have any reason to believe that they won't be.
Okay. Okay, good.
All right, well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, that's okay. No, that answered my question. It's like, sometimes there are some fairly adversarial viewpoints, depending on what environment you go into. So I just wanted to make sure and kind of test the water on that a bit.
Great. All right, so we're going to have to wrap up. I didn't know if you had any final comments you wanted to make.
No, I'm just kind of intrigued still with the city and the changes. Like I said, I'm only an hour north, and been going to Nashville for many years. Traveled there back and forth to work for a while as well. So it seems like an intriguing opportunity. So I appreciate the keep following back up, even though it's taking some time to get through there. So I look forward to seeing what happens next.
Well, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Deborah. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, and good luck down there. I know Corona happening directly after a tornado was definitely a double whammy to you guys down there. So,
yeah. All right. Stay safe and be well.
You guys as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Are we, I just want to check in with you. Are we good to go on with our next candidate, or do we need a break?
Good to go.
Good to go.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and send, and this is our last interview today, and this is John Cashman. So I am sending him the instructions right now. going to mute the call and give him a phone call. I'm going to mute. He is dialing in at the moment. John?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, very good. This is Wanda Hadley, and we want to thank you for dialing in this afternoon to speak with us. We have 5 members of the Audit Committee serving on the interview panel today. 2 of those you have interviewed with in person. 3 of them you have not. They are on the Audit Committee since fall of last year. I will go through and let you know who's on the call, and then each person, when they ask you a question, they're going to ask them in a round-robin format. They can formally introduce themselves to you. You may feel free to ask a question be repeated, and after you answer the questions, then any member of the interview panel can ask you a follow-up question. And then at the end, with what time we have left, you'll have the floor to ask any questions and or make some final remarks.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Any questions?
No, I'm good to go.
All right. Well, John, today on the interview panel, we have Chairman of the Audit Committee, Brack Reed. We have Vice Chair Charles Frazier. Those are the 2 that you have interviewed with before in person. And then we have Director of Finance, Mr. Crumbo, Kevin Crumbo, and then we have Councilman Tom Druffel and Councilman Zulfat Swara. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Reed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, John.
Good afternoon, sir.
Okay, first question. How has your education and professional experience prepared you for the role of Metropolitan Auditor for Metro Nashville?
The first thing is I have about 30 years of governmental audit experience. The majority of it has been at the local level. I've worked in a couple of large cities, City of Boston and Washington, D.C., and I've worked for several large other local government organizations. I've had a wide variety of experiences. I've performed financial compliance, performance audits. I've done a little bit of IT work. I've done some construction auditing. I've done some contract auditing. So I've had a wide variety of experiences. I hold a master's degree in business administration, and I'm a certified internal auditor and a certified government financial manager and a certified inspector general auditor. And I think that all combines to give me a breadth and depth of experience that would be helpful for Metropolitan Nashville.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next question, Councilman Suara.
Good afternoon, John. Thanks for being here. My question is, in your experience, have you had resistance with senior management in such a way that it hindered you or your team from successfully implementing or completing an audit? If so, can you provide us with an example and how you resolved it?
Yes, I've had run into resistance in several of the audits that I've done. Generally, what I try to do is I try to explain to people that, you know, I'm not here to basically, you know, shoot them after, you know, the battle is over, you know, the normal things that auditors are accused of doing. I actually want to help them. I tell them I want to help them improve their operations and maybe improve their workflow so it's easier for them and their staffs to work. I've had resistance in both, you know, providing documentation during the audit and at the start of the audit, and also when we've issued draft reports and getting them to respond to the drafts. In some cases, their responses have been less than what we expected, so I would go back and work with them. For the most part, it seemed to have worked out. You know, there were some people that I just could never work around, but we did issue audit reports. They weren't happy, but, you know, sometimes that happens. So I've learned to kind of go with the flow with that, and I don't expect resistance, but if I do encounter it, I've learned how to deal with it. And I've also learned that, you know, raising it above my level, you know, depending on who I'm reporting to and where I'm reporting, sometimes is very effective in getting people to respond to audit reports, to respond to audits and our requests.
Thank you. All right, next question, Mr. Crumbo.
Yeah, so I can see here you've got plenty of experience here with the government and education and so forth. Tell me a bit about continuing education and how you continue to educate yourself on internal audits.
I'm a big fan of free CPE, and now with the coronavirus and all the restrictions we have, a lot of firms are offering free CPE. So I've been, you know, sucking it up as fast as I possibly can. I do a lot of, as much as I possibly can, I try to do CPE. I also do a lot of reading. So hopefully I'm relatively conversant with audit subjects as they come up. But primarily it's free CPE, or, you know, occasionally if I have to pay for it, I will. But if it's something I really need, or if it's a really good instructor, then I might pay for it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next question, Mr. Frazier.
Okay, John, great to have you with us.
Thank you, sir.
My question revolves around a particular subject, and I have kind of three drill downs on that. So this involves managing personnel. And so the first part is, how would you describe your leadership style in managing people? Secondly, how do you deal with subpar performance among your people? And third, how do you manage conflict that might appear on your team?
My management style, I think they call it now servant leadership, where I make sure that my staff comes first. That I try to do as much as I possibly can for my staff, and I lead in some respects. I lead by example. I've told staff in other places that they're, you know, because of the depth of experience I've had, there probably isn't an audit that I ask them to do that I haven't done at least twice before. So that kind of helps. In the second question, as far as an underperforming worker, generally what I've done in the past is I will sit down and talk with them and try to find find out why they're underperforming. Is it because the assignment is just over their heads, or is it because they don't have the necessary training for it, or is it some other reason? And then I will work with them to try to get them back up to speed. And I will set deadlines for them, like you need to show me certain things by certain dates. And if they do show them to me and they're acceptable, I will just kind of monitor their performance after that to make sure that they are maintaining an acceptable level of performance. If they're not, I will work with them and in some cases, get them extra training, get them what they need. And in other cases, if they really cannot perform, I might recommend that they look for employment elsewhere, or I will help them with that, by terminating them. But hopefully the termination is the absolute last step. And most of the people that I've worked with, we've not gone to the point of I've had to terminate them.
Good. John, the third part, and maybe you were bringing that under the other one, but what about managing conflict among people?
Generally, it depends on what the conflict is. If it's like a personality issue, I will bring the people in, and both individually and collectively, and basically tell them, look, you're adults. You may not like the person, that's fine, but you do have to work with them. So for the 8 hours a day or whatever you're here, I need you to work with them. And if you can't, then I will take whatever appropriate action I have to take. But in most cases, it's almost a reminder, like, okay, you're an adult, do the right thing. If they can't do it, or that there is a reason other than just normal workplace back and forth and clashing of personalities, then I might suggest that they also look for another position. In some cases, I've had to, depending on what the policy is in Nashville, I might refer to Human Resources for assistance.
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Next question from Councilman Dreffel.
Yeah, hey, John. Here's the question. Have you been involved or managed an audit where you suspect a department organization is exposed to a major risk? And I have a couple follow-ups.
Okay. Yes, I have. And, I've seen financial risks. I've seen, in a couple of cases, risks of fraud. Have I answered your question?
Yeah. Can you give us an example of how you communicated this to senior management if you did this and how you handled it?
Oh, okay. On the financial risks, I've brought it up to the department head and also to the department head's boss to let them know, hey, look, if they keep going the way they're going, we think that there is a major financial risk here. And I will outline the risk to them, and I will outline some recommendations for them to start to change the process or whatever is creating the risk. For fraud, generally that's where I will elevate it to at least one level above where the person is reporting to. The last fraud I worked on, I had to elevate it to the superintendent of schools, and I will report to them and say, this is what we found, this is why we think it's fraudulent, and kind of outline the steps that we've taken to back up the evidence, and then ask for what as far as what they want to have done after that. We did not have a very good fraud policy in the school district, so I was kind of like on my own, and I ultimately ended up going to the school police and having them take a look at
auditor decisions and clearly had to deliver difficult news without regard to consequences?
That happened in several audits, where it's not an easy task, but because I'm involved with the audit deeply involved in the audit process, I kind of know that this is coming. So when we go to do an exit conference or an exit briefing with an area, we will, I'm really prepared to have them push back at me, and I do an awful lot of preparation to make sure that any question they can ask, I will have an answer for, and I get my staff to throw questions at me. And in some cases, what I'll do is I try to pull in people that haven't worked on the job at all, and just have them sit there and cold ask questions, so that I'm prepared. Because I know in some cases the people who were briefing have no real idea of what's coming.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next question, Mr. Crumbo.
Yeah, so again, thank you for being here this afternoon. A lot of times with metro government, so forth like us, and it sounds like some of your experience as well, you've got to deal with the media and some of the higher profile things that come your way. Can you share with us what your biggest experience has been with a high profile matter?
I ended up having a draft audit report leaked to the Washington Post, and it ended up on the front page of the A section on a Friday morning. The A section is the national section. That's really not good to have happen. And my boss's boss was very publicity adverse. He only wanted to see good publicity, never anything bad. So we had it was not a fun experience, but I was interviewed by a couple of reporters from the Post and a couple of people from a local TV station. And that was a long day.
I'm sure it was. So did you gain a lot from that experience, and were you satisfied with the results that came around? I've not heard the word, publicity adverse before, but I like it. I'm probably going to use that again.
Yes, I'm very publicity adverse. I've learned as much as possible, don't talk to the press on the record. So I also learned that it's best to answer their questions as honestly as I possibly can, and to only answer their question, not to expand on it. If I can do it with a yes or no answer, I do.
Great. Okay, thank you for that.
All right, and Mr. Reed, with our last scheduled question.
Yeah, John. If you were offered the position of Metro Auditor, what would be your plan within the first 100 days?
First thing would be to learn the staff. Interview my staff, talk to them about what audit projects they have going on, and why they fail, and get their ideas on where internal audit should go from here. The next thing is to look at the risk assessment, and now because of everything that's happened with COVID-19, I would probably end up redoing the risk assessment to see if we could highlight any additional risks or risks that we didn't know we had in the government. That would include talking with key department heads, with key people in the city government, the audit committee, to make sure that we incorporate your suggestions and concerns, and hopefully I would also my staff would be continuing to work on audits that we would that they had already started or were pre-scheduled, so that we were producing reports at the same time. But it would probably the biggest things would be risk assessment or relooking at the risk assessment, and if necessary, adjusting the audit plan or proposing adjustments to the audit plan and learning my staff.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Does anyone else on the interview panel have any follow-up questions?
Hey, John, this is Charles Frazier, and I know our process has been open for a good while, and we've had your resume a good while too. And I noticed that the last job experience you have occurred in 2017. Have you been consulting or some other things since then?
No, most of the time I've actually spent looking for another job. I've had a few interviews, but nothing that's clicked. I took a little time off after San Diego, and then I've been seriously job hunting.
Okay, all right, very good.
All right. Any other follow-up questions? All right, so at this point, John, we're going to turn the floor over to you to see if you have any questions that you want to ask and or any final comments that you want to make.
Okay. My first question is, what would you expect of me from the first 100 days? If I was to accept the position.
Well, I guess show up would be the first thing. No, I think the plan you laid out is very pragmatic, and you try to get the lay of the land, understand your staff, understand the audit plan, kind of get the understand the Metro government and kind of where we've been and kind of where we're going. But I think your answer was proper.
Okay. I guess my next question is, what would I have to do to get a gold star on my first performance rating?
Vice Chair, you want to take that?
A gold star.
Gold star.
We do have an annual, part of our annual work is to evaluate the auditor, and I think there are categories that we're given to do that. Wanda, do you know what they are? I don't have it in front of me.
You talking about the duties?
Well, we do an annual evaluation.
Oh, yes. I apologize. I misunderstood.
And it seemed like I don't know if we created that ourselves or that's something that we're given.
Well, I think there are, first of all, there are three parts of the performance evaluation, John. The first part is major job responsibilities, and those would most likely be identified between the Metro Auditor and the Audit Committee. So what are the major job responsibilities that would be goals for the upcoming year? The second section is competencies, and those are standard throughout Metro Nashville government, and they include things like communication, teamwork, initiative, and so on. And then there's a third section that has to do with attendance, compliance with rules, and so on and so forth. So the first part of the performance evaluation would be an agreement between the Metro Auditor and the Audit Committee on what the goals would be for the upcoming year. And then our performance management system is made up of basically three rating levels, 1, 2, and 3. 1 being does not meet requirements, 2 means meet requirements, and 3 means exceeds requirements.
No.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, hey, this is Kevin Trumbo, the finance director. We get this question in different forms, different ways, and I usually try to answer it, as consistently as I can. It's sometimes a challenge, but here, I think first and foremost, helping us inspire the trust of the public. We've generally done that here in Nashville. We've had a couple of recent events that have
given us less than a gold star and some of that. But, by and large, this has been a well-respected function. It's added quite a lot of value in terms of coming back with results and saying most of our functions here at the Metro government are going well. And in my view, as a practical matter, just beyond all the things that were just read off there, it would be helping us continue that, as well as looking at our performance audits and continuing to share, experience that you would bring from other environments. We're here in Nashville. We're lucky to have a lot of folks that are here from other environments. They add a lot of value, and I hope that we could come about some of the same sorts of things here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I have one more question, I think.
Okay.
What would you like to see internal audit do under the new director that you're not seeing done now?
Well, that's a pretty tough question because, from the chairman's perspective, the execution and the performance and the trust level that Kevin talks about of our current audit function is maintaining that would be really a good accomplishment.
I agree. We've had an interim internal auditor for quite some time who I shared a partnership at a professional work with for a while, and I think she's done a marvelous job. And we've had Bill filling in since she stepped away, and I think Bill would agree. We've got a good team of folks hard at work at the Metro government. So as it's said here in the South, we want to keep on keeping on.
Okay. Okay, and I guess my last statement would be kind of like a summary. I believe that my experience and my education and my background is a great fit for the Metro, and I would be an excellent director of audit, and that I'm probably the best candidate. You may not know it yet, but my experience, my ability to work with people, my ability to work with all kinds of crazy different situations. I'm not adverse to a whole bunch of change, and I'm also very cognizant that my staff basically they're responsible for all the good things that happen in the internal audit, and I'm responsible for all the bad stuff. And apparently that's very true. I think I would make a great candidate, and I hope you select me.
Well, thank you.
All right, very good. Well, thank you, John. We really appreciate your time, and we will stay in touch.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I hope you all have a good day.
You too. Be safe. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye. Okay.
Okay. I don't know if we need another 5-minute bio break before we move into the next part of the meeting.
I'm okay, but whatever everybody wants to do.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, let's move into the next part of our meeting, which is trying to come up with a consensus. And again, our goal and our objective is to have 3 qualified candidates ranked so that can be presented. And usually this is done sponsored by the council folks that are on this committee, and the vice mayor get it to the council and to approve. So starting, going through this process, we had 4 today, and we also, as a reminder, had 2 a long time ago. Man, March was crazy. And the other two that we had was it three? Yes, right. I'm sorry. We had Lauren, we had Paul Morris, and we had Brenda Roberts. So, do I have I guess I'd like to have a conversation, Terry, before you start, voting. And what I guess if anybody has any comments over, what the top three might look like, or, maybe we try to get to the top three and then we can try to rank them, or maybe we try to get to the top two and then add a third. Anybody have any observations that they would like to share to kind of start this conversation going?
I would only throw, and maybe a possible bias, because I think the last time I felt pretty good with, and the interviews were a little bit more straightforward. You could see their actions and stuff, but the two that came to mind for the last one were Lauren and Paul, as I thought were pretty strong.
Okay. Any comment on that?
No, I guess for me it's a question, and I don't mean to put us backwards, but do we have to do that today, or is that something that could be scheduled maybe even within the next week? I say that for the similar to what Tom is saying, I really would like to go back and look at the video, not just of the last one, but even of the ones that we interviewed today, just to have a complete sense of the whole thing before making the recommendation. But if we have to make a decision today, I've watched the last three, the first three, and so if we have to do that, but I just wanted to ask if that's an option that we have.
Well, I think, and I'll try to answer, and Terry can correct me, getting these interviews done, at least the outside parties, everything else is under our control. So it's really at what this committee wants to do is either, go ahead and try to come up with the top three today or reconvene, but it would be our decision. We've been in this now going on 1 year. I think that's when Mark resigned. So it's what the committee would like to do. I don't think there's a specific timeline that today is the day. It's just kind of, with every time we schedule something, it seems like something bad happens. So it's just really, it's time to come to a conclusion sooner than later, but I don't know if it has to be today. It's really whatever you guys want to do.
Chair Reed, let me interject something. Councilman Suara, the videos or the transcripts that you reviewed from the interviews about a month or so ago are the only ones we have. The interviews that were done last year in two separate instances, on one of those instances, the files were corrupt, and so the decision was made and the motion was made not to review any of those since we couldn't get all of them. So the ones that you have reviewed from about a month or so ago are the only ones there are besides the interviews today.
Yeah, it'd be late February. It was that Thursday in late February, I believe, before the tornadoes hit the next Monday.
Yeah, and Bill attached that in the email I think I saw earlier, a link to those interviews.
I will say this. Of course, Brack and I were present in all the interviews, now and previously. And I will say it does make some difference to be sitting in a room with them. And it's somewhat unfortunate that some had to interview by phone, but it couldn't be helped. But go ahead.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you were done. I'm sorry. The video that I was referring to was the one that Bill sent of the first three, but I was also thinking about the ones for today that will be available in 48 hours. To be able to see the people that we interviewed, that's what I meant by the videos.
No, I mean,
If we need to make a decision today, I'm ready to make it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if Brack and I probably would not be in agreement. We might be in agreement. We have to talk, but Brack, I can just give you my three. I won't rank them. I can just give you my three and make a comment, but I don't know if you want that right now or not.
Okay, may I just ask for clarification? For today, there are no videos. Today was only a recording of audio. Am I misunderstanding? Am I misunderstanding what Councilman Suarez is saying?
Yes, you are, because I thought there was, I thought we were judging by audio, but there was, so I misunderstood that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. There are no videos for today. The only interviews for today were audio.
Okay, all right, then that was my misunderstanding.
Okay,
And
I just wanted
that.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify.
Terry, can we kind of start talking about the list, even though we may not take action today?
Yeah, I mean, this is this is a public meeting. We are doing it a little differently for two reasons. Because of COVID-19 requiring the invocation of the governor's executive order, we normally would have the meeting be open to the public. Usually nobody comes, but nevertheless, we do that. But under these circumstances, we chose not to do that. Certainly, if the last person interviewed had the ability to listen in to the first interview, he would have had an unfair advantage in terms of preparing his answers to the questions in advance. And so that was the reason why we chose not to live stream the audio of today's meeting, just to keep everything fair and a level playing field. We believe that is justifiable, even though the preference in the governor's executive order is for live streaming these meetings, given our inability to allow attendees to come in person. But I think that the governor's executive order allowing audio or video recordings of meetings to be made available within 48 hours of the date of the meeting, that is something that we can do and be in compliance with the executive order and therefore with the Tennessee Open Meetings Act. So from that perspective, this is an open meeting and you can deliberate.
But this recording will be posted in 48 hours.
That is correct.
Okay. And it will not be held for confidential purposes. It's going to be posted.
No, it must be posted by the expiration of the 48-hour deadline to comply with the governor's executive order.
With that in mind, I think we need to decide if we want to attempt to make the list today before we start filling in that list. And so we'll come back and talk about it.
Well, Brack, I would say maybe the decision is not whether to make the list, it's just whether we discuss, our own preferences, which may be totally different from other people. That won't be the list of three. But we'll do whatever you think is appropriate. But
No,
I agree with you.
okay.
We may not do the three today, but at least we could talk about it. Or whatever you think.
What's the pleasure of the committee?
Maybe there's a possibility to I have a couple of highlights, I think, on a couple that I think are strong notes that I support more than others. A couple I'm more neutral on. Maybe just to get that out there is to highlight anybody that you feel strongly about, to get that out and why. And then that's for us to sort of take back and I think I might have at least two of mine that I feel comfortable with, but then I'm still deliberating on maybe a third. So those comments may generate either support or at least a different point of view as a way to start.
Well, I understand that. I guess my caution is if in 48 hours all the candidates are going to be listening. And so do we deliberate? If we're ready to move ahead, then I think deliberating and see how far we can go would be the thing to do. If we're not ready to move ahead, it may be better just to have that deliberation at the same time we're ready to move ahead. So I guess I'm asking the general consensus, are we ready to move ahead, or we want to delay this?
Yeah, guys, this is Kevin. I would really like to see us move ahead. This thing has a long and challenged history, and as we were said a moment ago, some bad things keep happening. I would hate for them to keep happening, but quite frankly, this COVID crisis leads us to a brand new place in terms of all things financial, including some responsibility that I've got under both of the executive orders that are out there, one for the tornado and one that originated COVID, to make sure that we don't have anything bad happen in the process of getting reimbursed, either from insurance, FEMA, TEMA, you name it. And having a strong internal audit function on top of the accountability group that audit reports to me is just paramount, I think, to our success. And I tell you, I'll just kind of keep going here and express my own bias. I think cannot overlook the notion that having somebody in this spot that's already familiar to us and familiar with the Metro government is going to be important. So I do have 3 candidates in mind that I think would do a good job. There's one in particular, Lauren, that I think is well-timed here. This is just a short tenure, 2 years. She's already here, and as I was describing, we're going to need the help. So I would very much like to debate this now, and let's move it along.
I'm ready to make my recommendations.
Okay, well, we'll deliberate, and we'll have a motion. Either we'll continue on or we won't. So who wants to start with their slate, or at least their top 2?
I can give you my top 2 if it's okay. I don't want to jump in if someone else is ready, but I sort of studied this before I got back in, and 2 of the 3, one, to Kevin's point, I thought Lauren was very strong. I loved her honest enthusiasm. She's got strong analytics. I think she can bring some technology components. She's detailed challenges and not afraid. The only slight negative I got was she possibly could avoid confrontation. That's a quick note on her. She's got a great experience. Education's real strong. Good experience. Second one is Paul Morris. I thought very diverse experience level, strong education, has experience in both private and public, very deep executive level experience, integrity, accountability, respect, great communication skills that he highlighted. One of his strengths that sort of countered Lauren slightly, and I don't, Lauren might have just been maybe more self-critical than she needed to be, but I think Paul Morris's was conflict resolution. He could highlight several major areas where he highlighted his conflict resolution at a high level. And so those are 2 of my 3. I don't have a third strong one, but at least those are my comments.
Was that in order?
I'm not sure their order. Those are just 2 that I recommend.
Okay. Anybody else?
Frank, do you want the order, or I can mention 3 and just make some comments?
No, I don't mind. If we're deliberating, we're moving ahead, so the order would be fine.
Well, I want to, I agree with Tom and Kevin. I think that in our first session, I do believe that Paul and Lauren were of all the people we've talked to, I think Paul and Lauren are up there in the top 2 or 3, and I'm going to put John Valtierra as my third. It occurred to me when I thought about it, because this particular person will serve only 2 years, and then they have to go through the process again. It makes a lot of sense for Lauren just to continue, just continue those 2 years. And then, of course, then the process has got to be repeated. If we were at the very beginning of the term, Paul Barr, in my judgment, he just made a good showing, in my judgment. But the fact that he would only have 2 years and had to go through it again, he may or may not want to move. I mean, I guess he would want to move because he's in the lineup. But at any rate, Lauren and Paul are in my 3, and then John Valtier would be my 3rd.
Okay. Good comments.
Yeah, I guess while we're on a roll, I can agree with pretty much everything that was said there, including that third candidate. Lauren, in particular, just stands out for all the reasons that she's here. We know exactly, I think, what we're going to get there. And to the point about perhaps shying away from conflict and things that are, at least in my view, more of a matter of gaining experience and confidence than they are, some sort of underlying shortcoming. She'd have a couple of years here to show that she can handle those things. So I could keep going, but truly it's all been said right now.
You worked with Lauren, correct?
Yes. Now, I'm going to say that my experience isn't every day with her. Obviously, by charter, she's independent, but she prepared some analysis for me several weeks ago that was just extremely helpful in narrowing down what I was going to have our accountability group inside the finance department focus on, as well as answering several questions I was being asked by the mayor and some council people. So I just have a great deal of confidence that she can step right here and help us in the midst of the 2 crises that we're trying to manage. And again, it's 2 years, and it'll be meaningful for her and really a way to show and demonstrate what she can do. And on the other hand, if it doesn't work out, it's only 2 years, and we're going to go again anyway.
Okay. I think, those comments, all your comments have been made, I agree with. Does anybody have any other things they would like to say before we entertain a
This is Sora. My 2 will be Lauren, but then my second will be John Cashman. I like Lauren for the fact that she's worked with Metro government and the experience of having been in the office. And so she's familiar with the audit and the process and the staff and everything that goes with it. My concern initially about her was the fact that there's a lot of changes in job for her, where almost every job is after a year or 2. And I guess that would not be a problem in this case because it's only for 2 years, and then we can look at that later. But in terms of the person that comes with knowing how Metro works and it being on the ground, I think, and looking at our interview as well, the confidence, I think she's a strong candidate. I put John there as my second one because of his experience working with big-sized government as well. And if you're looking for somebody at a time where there's so many things going on, having that field of experience and so many years of experience working with Metro government and government in general and working in different situations, I think that is the most experience, and that shows in his responses, both on paper as well as in the interview. And I think that was very impressive to me. And so John is a strong second for me, and then Lauren, and then I'm okay with whoever we agree to for the third one.
Okay. Anybody else have anything before I ask legal a question? Hey, Terry?
Yes.
I was envisioning voting on a slate, but can we vote on number 1 and number 2 and then number 3, and that become our slate?
I think we could do that. There's not a lot of super clear guidance.
Not very clear.
The charter, right.
Well, I would rather do that. I think we've got some consensus here, And if I could, if that's okay with you, if I could have a motion for who would be our number one slot.
I'll be delighted to nominate Lauren.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? We need a roll call. Bill?
I need a roll call.
Yep. Do I need to do a roll call?
Yes, you do need to do a roll call.
Okay, here we go. Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Frazier,
Yes.
Council A. Ferrara,
Yes.
Councilman Druffel,
Yes.
Mr. Crumbo.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion passes. Do I have a motion for number two on the slate? Rank number two.
Well, mine is Paul Morris.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Okay.
Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Frazier,
Yes.
Council A. Ferrara,
Yes.
Councilman Druffel,
Yes.
Mr. Crumbo.
Yes.
Okay, do I have a motion for number three, third rank?
I move John Valtierra.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I was on mute.
Uh-oh.
I was on mute and said that I wanted to move for John Cashman.
Terry, we've got a motion and a second. I guess I need to talk about it, right?
Yes.
Okay, any discussion?
Yeah, so this is Kevin. If I heard the council lady correctly, I think her point is John has, direct experience with municipalities and so forth, whereas John's got good experience, but it's not necessarily an area that she thinks applies. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate. I mean, both of them spoke well and both of them have experiences, but the one that is directly related to metropolitan government or government experience was the Cashman.
Yeah, I think that's persuasive in a lot of ways. And I also think he had a good sense of humor about some of the tough situations that he's been in. So, I think that the needle probably points towards the one with the most experience for the same reason I was mentioning for Lauren and Paul.
But his work experience, he hadn't worked in a while.
Kevin and Zora, I would just say this is where it's probably a little unfortunate that we didn't get to see all of them personally. But I just think after having personal interviews and give and take, and I think the fact that John Cashman has that gap, to me is pretty significant, and to me that's just kind of what takes him out. But he does have experience. I will agree to that. He does have experience, but
Charles, I didn't hear him as well as I liked it. Did he say why he had such a big gap there? I did hear him say he's been looking for some time, but did he?
Well, that was his answer. He just said he's been looking for work.
He said that he was looking for other position in the meantime. And if you look at his responses, the last position that he was in was eliminated by the city. I think they had a downturn, and he said in the community and was just looking for other jobs. That's what the gap was. But again, that's my personal take on it. But I'll go with the majority with team. So, but I do.
Okay, any further discussion on John Valtierra? Okay, roll call. This is for number 3 slot.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Frazier,
Yes.
Council A. Ferrara. Did you hear me, Council A. Ferrara?
Is she on mute?
No, I'm on. So, and I'm sorry I'm asking the question during the vote. This is the third person we're taking. We're not taking anyone else?
Yes.
No, our slate's 3.
All right. Yes.
Councilman Druffel.
Yes.
Mr. Crumbo.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We have our slate. Great. And we do rank all. And we, you know, and this, we've done this a few times, but for a couple of times. The ranking's important. At this juncture, we usually talk to the council representatives and vice mayor on how they would like to proceed. And since the vice mayor's not here, but this is where the committee hands it over to y'all would make the, I guess, sponsor it, and I don't know exact terms.
The question I guess I have is, how do we proceed when we get to the council? Do we recommend the position, or do we recommend and review their strengths? Is that?
No, what I recall, and Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a 1 vote. There's not 3 votes needed. It's simple. Here, to fill the internal auditor pursuant to our charter, fill in the blank. This is the ranking. We recommend the top one. Okay.
Yeah,
you make that motion, and if there's any conversation, you can have it, but there's not a discussion of strengths and weaknesses and things like that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I mean, there could be.
There could be.
Let me read the charter section. It's unfortunately not terribly specific, but this is from 8.121, which is also the same as, that's the charter, and then the code section is 224.300, and in section B in both. The Metropolitan Auditor shall be appointed by a majority vote of the council from a list of 3 persons recommended by the Audit Committee, whom the Audit Committee deems best qualified and available to fill the position. If the council deems that the persons recommended by the Audit Committee to serve as Metropolitan Auditor are not suitable and or qualified, the council shall reject the names submitted, and the Audit Committee shall recommend 3 additional persons deemed qualified and available to fill the position. So that's all the charter really says to it. So your finding is these 3 people are the 3 that the committee deems best qualified and available to fill the position.
What we've added in the past is a ranking.
Yeah, and we have traditionally done the rankings. The charter section doesn't absolutely call for that, but that has historically been done.
Yes, I would strongly encourage that.
Yes. Tom, I'm thinking that it will be like when we are appointing for a board and we have 3 or 4 candidates, and so we will present that list. But I think to make it stronger, when we do present it, I think it will be very important to show that there is a ranking, and it will be very clear that this is how the committee, what the committee is recommending, and so that should be okay. And Tom and I can talk to Jim as well as the council office as to what the next step will be from here.
Excellent idea. I was going to suggest that as well.
A question here for our council people. I guess all the way around. We've got this ranking. We seem to be pretty resolute the way we would like to go. Could we do a late file item for this Thursday and go ahead and get this done this week?
I don't know, but we can find out.
Yeah, I think that would be a question for Deo and Cooper. the filing deadline has passed for normally submitting something. This would not be in the form of really, I don't believe, a resolution or an ordinance. It would be more along the lines of a recommendation for appointment, such as is done with boards and commissions. I think it would be a good idea to talk to Mr. Cooper about how that would be handled.
I'm emailing the council office and asking them if that is possible, and I will send that to you as soon as I get a response. But I think we can, especially if we can show that this is something that we wanted to make a decision on. It's gone up for a long time, and we have the support of the finance director that this is considered an urgent thing. But I'm emailing the council office the deadline is just today, and so I think we should still be able to. But I will forward that response.
Was it today at noon, though? Am I wrong about that?
It is noon today. It is noon today, but I think we can do a late file. We'll check on it and get back to you.
Yeah. Normally a late file can be done if there is a suspension of the rules. So that might be possible. It could be added to the amendments packet, and if I think it's no more than 2 council members object, then it can be added to the agenda. But I am not the expert on that. I would definitely defer to Mr. Cooper. So.
Yeah, and here's, just to be more specific here, there's been a lot of fraud in federal and state programs over the years, and so before the CARES Act or any of that, of course, we had the storms, and again, when we wrote that executive order, we put in there very specifically that there would be careful monitoring of all the expenses that went out by the Metro government, as well as what reimbursements come in, and I think it just, at this point, given now not one but two big events, that we've got a permanent position for internal audit. We're fully staffed on accountability, and that we're looking after these numbers. And just to give you some sense of it, estimate as of this moment for recoveries out of the CARES Act alone look like they're going to approach $120 million. And, of course, those guidelines are brand new, and that number can change wildly. But when I say we're talking about big numbers and things we need to be just so very careful about, that's the magnitude of numbers that I'm thinking of.
Well, if there's a chance to do it, we're all behind it. So as soon as we find out, and it's possible, Kevin, I think Councilwoman Torres and I will definitely do whatever we can.
Perfect. Okay, thank you for that.
We're depending on you guys now. Okay. Is that order of business satisfied for legal and HR purposes?
I believe so.
Yeah, it is great, Dar. I did, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, I did confirm with Shannon that once it goes to council and they have approved it, the next step would be to make the offer to the successful applicant, which would be starting date of the position, salary, and anything else that goes along with it.
Okay. Okay, so that order, that business is behind us. Is there anything else that we can talk about, like the next meeting date, or is it off limits to it?
I think that you can talk about that. That's fine. That's just procedural.
Okay. Bill, we had a meeting set up for next week. You said that did not get up.
Yeah, I didn't get enough responses for a quorum, and I appreciate you all being patient on all the emails I've been sending out the last few weeks. So we really have 2 options. It's not too late to have one next week. I will need to get in touch with ITS. This is a little bit different. That it'll be video conferenced. Or I can send out another email for early May. I know you guys have a lot of competing priorities. It's totally up to what you all want to do.
I would suggest having one while we're all working from home, because it's going to get really busy when we go back.
Okay.
And I don't know if you can even do video conferencing with everybody. So
I'll go either way. I'm good either way.
okay.
So We have been doing some board and committee meetings via WebEx with the support of Metro ITS, but they have generally not been done by video. They have generally been done audio only. The good thing that we have used WebEx for is document sharing, so that way everybody can be looking at the same document at the same time. But the screen would not be like showing everyone.
Well, as long as we're emailing out reports, we can look on our computer or iPads for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm on the Employee Benefits Board, Airport Board, Investment Committee. Almost every one of those has just enjoyed great success getting these things done. And the smaller the group, the easier. There's a few folks that struggle with the audio component just for background noise and whatnot. But, for the most part, given how quickly this came on, it couldn't be going any better.
Now, one thing I will say is that you will need to coordinate with ITS because we had kind of a special reason why this meeting needed to be recorded and made available to the public at a later date. With a normal meeting, we would not have that special reason. So the executive order otherwise states a strong preference for live streaming a meeting, whether that's via Metro Nashville network or some other format, and it can be audio streaming. That's fine. That's what we've been doing. But there would have to be some real-time availability for the public to monitor the meeting, and ITS would be the contact for providing that. I know that they have. They're stretched pretty thin right now, providing the support for all the Metro boards and commissions doing that. So you may want to talk to them as well in picking your meeting date to see if there's a day where they are not already kind of at the breaking point.
Would it be helpful if I called ITS and then sent an email out to you guys?
Yeah,
That'd be good. I'm pretty flexible.
Okay, well, I'll call ITS tomorrow morning, and then I'll send an email out once I know more specifics.
That'd be good.
Okay. The agenda has need for a special meeting, or excuse me, do I need to move into an executive session?
Do we have
I don't know of anything.
matter for an executive session?
I don't have anything.
Yeah, it's on the agenda. Okay.
It's always on the agenda just because the law does require us to put it on the agenda if we want to do it. So we just always put it on there as a precaution. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's particular business that requires it.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank each committee member for your work. And Bill, Wanda, and Terry, we couldn't have done this without you guys. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you all.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, great job. Great job.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you. Second. We're adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.